the OBS. All right, and we should be live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly wrap-up of the news as I see it with FNGEddie.
Hello.
This is going to be a live recorded podcast. We're just going to be covering up all the sort of loose ends and going deeper into all the stuff I talked about in the individual episodes of every day, and talking about some new stuff that we think sort of ties in or we felt didn't fit for a quick news on the daily basis.
All right, so let's get started.
Yep, and if you want to, down below in the description, we have a slew of links for you to follow. Go ahead and take a peek at that because while there is a lot, and we're going to talk about them all, and some are related, some are standalone, we've organized it in the way we're going to be talking about it so you can keep track fairly easily.
Avoid the whole leapfrogging
Yep.
situation.
Try and keep the related news together. I can be louder, I've been told. How about we make Eddie a little bit quieter? That's a lot easier.
That's a lot easier.
Yep, a little bit of growing pains in the first episode, guys, and this is live. I think we're going to be editing a actual podcast version for iTunes and things of that nature. So maybe some of these original sort of tech, quote-unquote, difficulties we can remove. How's that audio sounding?
Test. Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Waiting for confirmation. We've gone extreme.
Going ham.
Yeah, I know there's a delay. No worries. And the word is...
Drum roll, please.
He's still a little louder than you, but it's a lot better.
mind-boggling.
Sorry.
Okay, we'll just see, and you can tell us if, after it gets going, if it needs to be changed. All right, so to the notes. So to follow up on earlier episodes, Zynga closed 11 titles this week, and EA closed 12. Now, there's some very different sort of situations for these closings. You know, Zynga being a social media, sort of mobile iOS only type developer, and EA being relatively only big box releases. And I say only as of lately, they've kind of gone into the iOS type social market.
Yep. So what's interesting about Zynga's closing is if you'll notice, some of them are sequels or spiritual successors to other games that they have that are basically cannibalizing the original. And so people are not wanting to stay in the first one because there's a second one out, but then they don't want to get to the point that they were in the first one in the sequel. So the second one isn't having success, and as a result, it's stealing the success of the initial titles. Whereas EA, go ahead.
Go ahead, yeah.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
I was going to say Zynga is also on a, I mean, they are a cash cow company, and that works fine for their original titles because they were wildly successful. But now they've been trying to copy things like The Sims Social with, I think it's called The Ville. And they've dumped so much money and manpower into copying something, it's actually slowed down their sort of cash cow ingenuity that they've been so successful with.
Yep, I mean, they're still making profit. It's just not the profit levels that they were seeing initially.
Yep, and I think they've grown in directions that aren't really helping them. They expanded, sort of like if you look at Mojang, who has almost not expanded at all, and they're just raking in just literally millions and millions of dollars. It's mind-boggling that a company like Zynga, which I think is, for a small company, relatively large, and you would think with the simple games they're making in terms of graphics, mechanics, principles, everything, and then also a lot of I think every single one of them has some sort of cash shop. It's almost mind-boggling
Every single
to me
one,
that they're not doing well.
It's the other thing is, for a company, they have a lot of games out at the same time. They're all actively supported. and it's for some people it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know I got sick and tired of Facebook when I had a Mafia War update
Mm-hmm.
left and right from everyone, or Farmville. I don't want to
Oh
plant your damn crops.
yeah. Yep.
And then over here we got EA. So with EA, it's more of their closing services on dated games,
Mm-hmm.
and these games being heavily sport related, and just not having updated rosters anymore. People want that new roster that for the year that they're in.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because it's what is it? It's only 2 games out of the EA titles that aren't sport games.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting. My software capture. Why are you trolling? You can go ahead and keep talking. I just lost a visual on my thingamajigger.
Right, yeah, no. Closing for EAs, it's understandable. It's a thing that has to happen because otherwise they're gonna end up with a lot of server costs eventually. I mean, they're not losing money over this.
Mm-hmm.
It, server, server pretty cheap for them, and they make so much profit off of this stuff. They sell it all the time. It's the whole COD thing. There's a game every
Mm-hmm.
year. So I mean, the bottom line isn't hurting, but they also don't want to spend all this money on older titles.
It's in my first or the video relating to the EA article. I thought it was interesting because I actually hadn't read too closely at the years of those titles. They're 2011 sport games. That just shows you how long they've been doing this. They're already like, we have like a 2-year cap on sport games and they're done. We cannot support games for longer than that. Even if they're still played by possibly thousands of people, we have to move on. For one
Yep.
thing, they cut down tremendously on costs of supporting those titles, and then it is driving people to have to go buy the new titles. Which one is outweighing the other? I'm not sure if it's a dichotomy or if they're far more interested in selling the new title.
I would think that it is. They want to push the new product out,
Mm-hmm.
so they're reducing your access to the older titles.
Right.
All right. So 38 Studios. These guys, they got a deal from Rhode Island,
Mm-hmm.
and they were being paid to basically work on in Rhode Island, produce games in Rhode Island, and it flopped
Tremendously.
big
Millions
time.
of dollars for them to come out, live in Rhode Island just to basically be residents and employees of the state. Not of the state, but in the state. And it it flopped so bad that they were making Project Copernicus, and then it wasn't doing so well. They weren't getting the progress they wanted, so they quickly flipped it into Kingdoms of Amalur, which is not unlike a game like Fable, but you could very much tell it almost reminds me of Too Human, where there's tremendously amazing aspects such as the world, the environment, but in the game itself, you're kind of confused about how it plays. It's almost not there in some respects.
A lot of it, if you think about it and look back, it's cannibalization of the MMO that you just named.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to throw something together because they didn't have the money to make the MMO. They were running out of money and they needed to produce something and get some sales.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it was too big, felt too empty, and was released around the time that Skyrim came out. So they were
Yes.
hugely overshadowed by an extremely huge title. And I mean, as a game company, you never are. So MMOs are the most expensive things to develop in the gaming industry. You never make your first game an MMO.
Never.
It's business 101.
Even if and we are talking sort of full scale, full graphic, full mechanical production MMOs. We're not talking like like a Facebook MMO or an iPad MMO. We're talking
Right, full-fledged
full
AAA
to the wall
title.
AAA title. In which case, you're usually looking at a few hundred employees minimum, and each of them, at least the majority of employees, have to have some serious real world developing expertise. So I can't not use the direct information. I mean, he's an ex professional baseball player. where in the world does that translate into? Yeah, you should be able to make an MMO. Probably the hardest thing in gaming to make and pull off.
I mean, it's straight out of left field, man.
Exactly. Trunts.
Be here all week.
So, what even?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I would say what really kind of interests me about this case is it wasn't until after all of this sort of the studio falling apart, Kingdoms of Amalur not doing too well, which obviously was a last-ditch effort to make money for Project Copernicus. But if you look at Project Copernicus, the screenshots and stuff they show are amazing looking. It's hard to tell. They say like, "Oh, this is all in-game footage," and you go, "Okay, like how are you going to say no without a YouTube video from some dude handycamming him playing it at E3, you know?" But it looks amazing, and it's kind of crazy that it even got to the point where they had to sort of quickly scrap it and flip it into a single-player game. It's interesting that some people like Peter Molyneux, who never actually deliver, are able to make whatever they want constantly and have tons of time to produce. And then this guy who was a state government gave him a huge loan and let them all have tax benefits and things for living in Rhode Island, and then the huge just it flopped and they didn't have any promise in terms of actually being able to finish the game. Not to mention the auctioning of the company. I believe they were trying to recoup. It's in as much as like $30 million, $62 million, something exuberant, and they only made back like 600,000 or 60,000.
Yeah, really small percentage.
Something not even in the tens of percents. So, and I'm talking they auctioned off the IPs, they auctioned off every computer, they auctioned off like the light switches, and not even a fraction was recouped.
Yeah, basically a fire sale. And I mean, really, it's just to go back to the fact that they attempted to develop something that is just too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too expensive.
And I think it shows even though the SOE is, I would say, the only company who has just nearly a dozen MMOs under their belt, they do have the street cred to make a new MMO whenever they pretty much please. But you look at PlanetSide, which is not only a sequel to a pretty successful almost cult MMO, it's after 2 EverQuest, it's after a PlanetSide, it's after a Star Wars MMO. All of them were successful. Some of them were patched in ways that destroyed them, but at any rate, it's a second PlanetSide. And they, I feel like, have been extremely safe with the title, and it's being, in my eyes, very successful, and they pulled it off, for me, amazingly.
Yep, they're very smart in the way they develop things. And as buggy as PlanetSide 2 is right now, it's getting better.
Mm-hmm. And
like
I feel
it's
like,
hands down one of the best MMOs to date.
Oh, for sure. And I feel like the bugs that are in it, although some are relatively game-breaking, the game runs completely smooth, and then you just crash into a bug. So I would say almost 95% of the meat is completely fine, and there's a little bit of fat on it that you just got to trim off eventually.
Yep.
And so they went extremely unambitious with the majority of the plan, unlike what I'm assuming Project Copernicus went just over the top in every sector and didn't meet any goal in any sector.
Nope, it
and
did
have
not.
fallen short across the ball field. Doo-doom-ch.
Here all week. So another story of another developer that went under, THQ, had to file for bankruptcy because they were not meeting their goals. They had a very lackluster year in gaming for 2012. They had a lot of good titles, and some of which, like Homefront, that are just absolutely garbage.
Yep.
But they weren't like that. They never had a Call of Duty.
Right.
They never had that cash cow. I mean, Darksiders was a fantastic game when it came out. Darksiders 2 followed up and delivered.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't get the sales that they were looking for.
Not at all.
And so they had to file for Chapter 11, unfortunately.
It's interesting that, I mean, THQ is one of those companies that I will always know that name. It's a huge name in gaming, but as of the last couple of years, they've just completely fallen off the radar. And things like Dogstalkers and Homefront were some of. In Homefront was one of those games where it was pushed extremely heavily and didn't deliver. And then Darksiders was pushed very heavily, and I feel like a lot of people were pleased with it. But a game
And I mean,
that
they had
does
Saints
pretty.
Row.
Oh yeah, Saints Row as well, which not entirely sure on the sales of that game. For me, it's one of the best games I've ever played, hands down. I love the game. I think what they pulled off with humor and actual gameplay mechanics excelled or exceeded every expectation I ever had, and made the rest of the series just look like the trash it actually was.
Yep.
GTA ripoffs.
Yeah. Saints Row 1. Oh my god.
Because I feel like Saints Row 3, the humor they pulled off was, although extremely adult, which is fine because it fits the setting, it was in line with some of the older sort of Lucas games, all those adventure games and things they used to make that were just riddled with humor, and it was dark humor. But in Saints Row 3, you have violent and sexual humor, which I love because if it's done right, it's realistic.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't take itself seriously. It's
Mhm.
very lighthearted, at the same time, very mature game, but they did it well.
Yep.
Spend hours on that game just fooling around.
Mm-hmm. And
But
speaking of,
they
their failure, I can't even begin to. I mean, every day that the DLC for Saints Row 3 came out, I bought it hands down, no question. Because after the first two, I was like, man, this is just some of the funniest, most well done DLC I've ever played in a game. So it really astonishes me. Like, they must have just had major, major flops at THQ to cause this.
I think it comes down to they didn't have that title
Yep.
that sold the company.
Yeah, they didn't have a flagship, and it's almost like with Homefront and Darksiders, they were like, which one do y'all want to be the flagship? Could you let us know for us? We need that little bit of help, which isn't really good in terms of being a developer.
And then what they did after that, what they did to recoup costs, they Humble Bundle 6 was it? Was entirely THQ
Yeah.
games. And it was one of the best
Mm-hmm.
Humble Bundles in my opinion ever.
Oh, by far.
You could for $6 get every title on there. And that's Saints Row 3, you had Company of Heroes, there was Dawn of War at some point that was added later. I mean, it's a
Darksiders on
whole
it?
slew. I don't remember if Darksiders was on there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they made a lot of money was made for the bundle, but
Oh, yeah.
THQ itself did not make a good chunk of it.
Right.
Because again, you share between charity, developers, and Humble Bundle.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
they
people
did
can
that.
choose where it goes.
Yep. And then they had Metro 2033, an amazing game,
Mm-hmm.
very underrated, did not get the publicity it deserved.
Right.
And they gave that game for free. And for a while it's been free. I don't know if it's still free right now.
I think
But
it
if you
expired at the end of the year.
gotcha.
But speaking of like Metro 2033, which I never really looked into too terribly much because of it looked more like a horror game from what it was being billed as in my eyes. And then
It
after I
felt
saw
like
it
it.
streamed even once, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like super cool. And I feel like THQ either never invested the original income or never having that flagship title didn't have the millions they needed to push it on TV like the Call of Duties do, where, a week before Call of Duty comes out, the only commercials you're going to see are Call of Duty commercials, as if it's like the presidential election or something.
Yep. Or related products that
Mm-hmm.
are pushing Call of Duty.
Or Mountain Dew, Call of Duty
Yep.
soda,
Yep.
So yeah, I was surprised with THQ not doing well. I never thought they were doing well, but in terms of bankruptcy and the whole auctioning story, which is kind of hilarious. Try and do the quick sale, which a lot of people have objected to, and even the quick sale, they basically had a short amount of time to sell a company. They wanted to sell the company to this other company, and it seems really shady because in the contract it says if that company doesn't buy, or if THQ isn't sold to the company, they get $2 million or something. just because the deal wasn't made, or 200 million. It was a huge amount of money in terms of the overall sale price, just because they were the original bid, and if they didn't get it, they were going to get money out of it no matter what. And I was like, that's just really shady and doesn't actually fit an auction standard at all.
I think what they did with that, to also go with them, is there was a part in there in the contract that said that the higher ups were going to keep their position within THQ. And now that basically court ordered or denied them the sale. So they are open to bidding by a half a dozen other companies,
Right.
Warner Bros. Being a big one in there. And they want IPs to be sold individually. They want to nitpick and tear apart THQ and get the assets they want. And now they have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And it also means that the executives, those higher ups, are not guaranteed their position at the top anymore.
And I feel like realistically, trying to keep THQ as a unified entity and just pass it on to somebody in a bankruptcy situation makes no sense.
It doesn't. I mean, something went wrong. Somebody made bad decisions, and keeping all of them doesn't make sense. You got to get new people in. You got to get new ideas rolling. You got to bring this back out of the grave that they dug for themselves.
Exactly. And then on the flip side of this chart, you have actual success stories, like Angry Birds, who on Christmas week sold/downloaded over 30 million times. That's huge. I mean, you hear the sale numbers for things like Call of Duty and stuff, and it kind of drowns out your perception of what is actually a success in video game sales and like movie sales. But 30 million downloads for an iPhone game that pretty much everyone has that I've seen, or has at least played it, which is still itself a huge deal. You can go to pretty much anyone under 40 and be like Angry Birds, and they'll have at least an inkling of what you're talking about. That's pretty huge, especially 30 million in a 1 week time frame.
Yep, and it's this really, really simple game, really small game. It's been out for quite a while, and the fact that it's getting 30 million in a week is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of being so simple, graphically, mechanically, the level design, every single aspect of it is insanely simple. It is artfully done and very smooth, and it plays the way you think it should play. So it is extremely well executed, but in terms of design, simple, which is actually a very good thing, not in any way a derogatory comment. They made it clean, simple. Not sure what kind of dev team they have on the game. I would imagine relatively small. So costs have to be very low and just extreme profit margins.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's smart, and they took sort of they took the ideas pretty much set forth by Zynga and just built on the successful aspects, and I imagine they haven't bloated themselves with unsuccessful titles. They have like a dozen Angry Bird titles, and they all do well.
Yeah, I was going to mention that unlike Zynga, they're focused on Angry Birds and Angry Birds alone. And then also that this is an example of, like what I was saying earlier, you don't go in as a new company making these giant games like 38 Studios was trying to do. You start with something like this. This is what new and aspiring game developers, or just persons, just individual people, when they go into the game industry, you want to develop something small, simple, something that catches you. And here's the proof. And alongside that, we got Minecraft. They sold 5 million units on Xbox Live.
Yep.
And 453,000 of those being on Christmas Day.
Yep, Christmas Day, not week like Angry Birds of 30 million, but the one day of Christmas, 500,000.
It's amazing. And again, this is another game. It's been out for a long time. You could buy into it since alpha. It's always accessible to you, and it is still selling like hotcakes.
And even the Xbox Live Arcade version, which to me is it's almost like a demo of the actual PC version because the worlds are very small. The controller for me is a very limiting experience for Minecraft. It still functions fine. Comparing it to the mobile version to me, it's almost like, oh, I have an idea what I'm going to build. I'll just jump in and build it real quick for later or something. Whereas Xbox Live version, it feels like the game, but almost like with the controller and the smaller world slightly kind of hindered and handicapped. But it is the game. And even with those limitations, 5 million sales, it's only been up for this year, right? So, yeah, it's been up for a year, basically. So
Yep.
it's 5 million sales in a year, its first year, and 500,000 on Christmas Day alone. And I believe you can get the game cards for it at like Walmart and stuff like that, GameStop. You can just get an actual Minecraft card, I think. And you just have a CD key, basically. So it's it's like a solely digital distributed game that you can basically achieve, buy the rights for in retail now, which I think is a future of, because I mean, for me, I've had like a debit card and a credit card for a while, so I have no problem actually buying things like through Steam. And then some people who don't have credit or credit cards, or they only have cash or what have you, they can actually go get a code for it and then download it, which I think is a really big deal in terms of achieving these multi-million-dollar standards.
Oh yeah, and the cost to just being you go buy the card, get the code, rather than go buy the disc and get this boxed unit. I mean, there's cut costs right there. Because these guys, they just get the plastic, go download, that's it. There's no cardboard or any manuals or anything like this that have to be printed.
Yep. Yeah, printing and boxing and shipping are incredible costs. I mean, putting like 4,000 gift cards in a box and shipping them, for one thing, they could be like airdropped out of a plane and they won't get damaged. So fragility and things don't matter. You can stack boxes as high as you want, doesn't matter. And the cost they're saving on production of boxes and printed materials and CD printing, they usually don't discount like a game card or a digital key. It's still $30 or $60, whatever the MSRP is. So they're just gaining all that extra cost. And for me, if it's a standard edition game, let's say it's a $30 PC game, standard edition, I'd rather download it digitally for $30 than even have to worry about what I'm going to do with that box that I paid for.
Yep.
If it's a collector's edition with a cool metal box, different story, goes on a shelf, it's cool. I'll pay extra for that, but I don't want to pay $30 and have to deal with a box. I'd rather pay $30 and you not send me that.
Of course.
Because manuals nowadays are just, they don't even have actual helpful info. It's button layout and then it's like legal information.
Some of them aren't even manuals. You get this like sheet of paper that says a list of things that can be done, and then maybe some controls on the flip side. So a game that was doing well, but not because it deserved it, and now it's basically the leper of the internet.
Yep.
War Z, the ripoff of DayZ. DayZ being the mod to Arma 2. So War Z has basically, the lie is that they've been developing this game before DayZ, and that DayZ is actually a copy of the War Z, which is 100% unfounded. And then, so the controversy surrounding this game is not that. It's, they got on Steam. They got on Steam with a bag of lies. Their feature list promoted the game with things that they don't have developed yet, but is a feature list that they have on their site saying things that are going to come during the course of development.
Yep.
I don't remember any feature on there that was truthful. And basically they wanted to get it on Steam for the holidays. Thank God it didn't make it to the holiday sale. Another thing that they did was there was art for the War Z that is basically stolen screen caps, and like they applied a red filter to it and changed maybe a thing here and there on the flesh of the zombies. But these are zombies that came from the Walking Dead TV show. And then Steam took them down within a couple of days of being put up and basically shamed them for doing so.
Oh,
They
they didn't take
had,
it down. They disabled the sales.
they disabled sales. They allowed the page for the Warzy to still be listed, basically as a head on a pike
Mm-hmm.
to show you, yeah, your game was on here. You're not getting another dime.
Nope.
I mean, granted, they will put the game back up there if they match their features that they
Absolutely.
were selling, and which is fine, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But as a company, I will never buy a product from them.
Nope.
Warzy is basically assets from War Inc. with zombies. That's
And,
all it is.
you know, taking a game engine and repurposing it for another game, I'm fine with that. Just like with PlanetSide's new Forge Light, they are really branding it as a new MMO engine, but it seems to be more like a broad engine that they can completely change the game inside of. So basically, it's the graphical engine, the mechanics that are being translated. So like an EverQuest in that engine would just be EverQuest. But then you have this game, which they took literally just the game War Inc. and basically made it a quote-unquote type expansion by reskinning things, and has sold it as a standalone, claiming things that aren't true, trying to rip people off, and when people accuse them of this on their forums, they ban them from their forums, ban them from the game so they can no longer play it. It's crazy. Can you not even own up to a single thing you're doing? You're not even going to talk about it? You're just going to like hose it down and hope it just like goes down the drain?
Oh, and the gall of these people. So they put out a letter, an apology letter, blaming the consumer for not understanding what they were doing with this release. They called it a quote unquote foundation release and defined it, but this game is unfinished. There is no release.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I followed development for 2 months. There were no changes, no updates, no bug fixes, nothing. The game did not change in any way, shape, or form. One thing that they were constantly keeping up with, though, was the cash shop. They 100% made sure that it was working.
Of course. How are you going
And
to be a
it's
cash cow if your cash flow isn't sustained?
exactly. I mean, everything they've done and the way they've been going about things is just, it's terrible. A company should never behave this way. And it's just appalling that they got this far. And even more appalling, the amount of consumers backing them up
Mm-hmm.
and basically turning a blind eye to everything that is wrong, to all the lies, and saying, oh, hey, they said it's going to come. It's going to come.
Yep.
It's not. It's not happening.
And
I mean,
they haven't
hopefully
even...
one day, they'll own up to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that rating.
Yep.
The Eurogamer review. One of the best written reviews I've read in recent memory. They hit the nail on the head. It was good.
And the guy who wrote it clearly is disgusted with the company, and that is the article. But he's also thoroughly disgusted with the game, and I think it's a very fair article. It's extremely eloquent and well written, and made me extremely happy reading it, because it was like, clearly this guy has received no money from this company. He is outraged, and he's telling you why. And it's super almost scientific, because it's clearly he is not happy with it, but he is telling you very methodically why.
There was an incident actually in the forums where I think something like a mod was banned from the forums for saying something against them, and he turned around, made a video, and bashed the hell out of Warzy. The video was taken down, and he wrote an apology video that sounded forced.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure he was threatened with legal action.
Well, he probably signed a contract that said you're never allowed to
Yep.
bad mouth, blah, blah, blah. But who reads those things, honestly? I mean, it's
Right.
always your fault, but who reads them? No one can. You don't have that kind of time.
Of course not.
But, see, I love the end of this one paragraph. It's eloquent and methodical, and then it's just hyphen, and I think it's lame. I was like, nice. I enjoy your thoroughness, sir. And see, even these skyscrapers that are in front of rendered mountains aren't rendered. Cool. That's really helpful in I'm surviving, there's snipers, what do? I can see through that building. And I do believe some of these buildings are supposed to be enterable. So, fantastic.
Fabulous game. 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
Would
Fabs,
buy
check
10
it out.
copies. Would buy 10 copies. Just in case.
Buy them on Steam, of course.
Of course, 10 copies on Steam because they let you. All right, so Nikochan. I am not familiar with this game whatsoever.
I think the most interesting part of the story is it's a Virtual Boy game. It's a lost game. They found it, and it's going to be re-released. That alone humors the ever-living hell out of me, especially since I recently brought up, the Oculus Rift in one of the videos, saying I can no longer make Virtual Boy jokes. But it's now relevant yet again that Virtual Boy, the thing that burns your face off,
That's
is
right, folks.
having a
He
title
said
re-release.
Virtual Boy.
Yep. If you've never played a Virtual Boy, I got one year, possibly for Christmas, birthday, I'm not sure, thinking surely this has to be pretty cool. It was sometime in the 90s. I was really young, and it's on a tripod. It's maybe, like a 12-foot tall unit, maybe 14 or so, and you set it on a little metal tripod, and it's this big, huge 3D goggle thing, like the old IMAX goggles or something, and it'd be sitting there, so you wouldn't wear it, you just put your face into it. And then it was only like this image here, black and red, and of no sort of good contrast, more like a Game Boy in black and red. And the 3D was not unlike the 3DS, but extremely bad. And after 5 minutes of playing the game, you basically were bleeding out of the eyes and ears with a giant migraine headache.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad I never got one.
Yep. So we returned it, within a week. It was just literally like a medical hazard. So quickly got rid of it. But I think this is interesting that they're going to be remaking the game, from what it sounds like, in actual Virtual Boy cartridges and selling it for $100, or you can just download the ROM for free.
For free.
Yep. So that just made me happy that any Virtual Boy news makes me happy.
Put a smirk on my face.
I'm just waiting for a new article involving all those copies of the ET game on Atari somehow like crawling out of their grave.
Oh God. No, let's not go there.
Yeah, if you don't know the story, you should look up the ET Atari game story. They made 50 million copies of this game ET that was, for one thing, terrible, but there was twice as many copies as there were Ataris, I think. That's cool. Real smart.
Yep.
All right.
So
Zeno Clash.
go ahead. Yeah.
For me, this is just it's just recapping, but this just announced that Zeno Clash 2 will be coming out in spring, hopefully. And if you've never actually seen Zeno Clash 1, it is on Steam. It was $1. Now I'm sure it's back up to 10 or so. It's one of the most interesting games I've ever seen. The fighting, I would say the actual sort of mechanics of the game, I'm afraid to launch the gallery, might crush the thing. But
Oh.
this is in-game right here. This is what the game looks like. So feel free to check out, Zeno Clash 1. It's cheap on Steam. Tons of photos, videos you can see. It's a super interesting, basically fighting game. Well, I wouldn't even call it a fighting game. It's not unlike the way you play Skyrim, where it's a first-person game and there's, like a left and a right mechanic type thing, and you interact through a campaign, a story, in a relatively sort of open world. But the characters, the world, it's all unique. It's not rehashed. It all looks like it's almost on a next-gen console because it's so out there. It's who's the guy who did Pan's Labyrinth and Hellboy 2?
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah. It looks like he just made a game. It looks like someone gave him a huge budget and he made a game.
He actually, in fact, did get involved in a game, and it looked really good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was hyper stylistic, and I loved the way it looked. Never played it. Kind of sad I never touched it, but his art direction is amazing.
Yeah, that is ringing a bell, actually. I'm not sure what it was. But this is one of those games that, and I will stand by the fact that I have the first one. I bought it a few months ago, haven't played it. I regretfully haven't done it, but it's one of those things. It's like when you get a movie like Clockwork Orange or something, and you're like, okay, I need a rainy day, a bag of 400 Skittles, and it needs to be the right time to watch the movie,
So many factors have to be in the right place. Yep, I totally agree.
There's gonna be a day where I'm like Zeno Clash 1, man, that's all I'm doing. It's gonna be like perfect, and I'm just gonna do it, and it's gonna be life changing. I hope.
And before he does it after the podcast.
Exactly. But this is one of those games that I feel like in years to come, even possibly decades, we're gonna look back on, and everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, that's easily one of the best games ever made." Blah blah blah. I played that when I was young. Whether or not you did or not, you're still supporting the fact that you agree it pioneered something, and it's just not rehashing the same garbage. It's super unique looking. The look alone to me is life changing in terms
It's
of
very
the
unique.
industry. And I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I went to art school. I watched a lot of independent films, a lot of crazy, weird things, and this to me is a super polished game that is utterly unique. And it's just something that I think you should seriously, anytime you see any stories on these Zeno Clash titles, you should read them and figure out what's going on, because it's going to be awesome.
I think my favorite thing about it is more than the game is that this company put chips down and betted on an original IP,
Exactly.
which is something you don't see often at all because it's scary territory. Making a new game, a new series, it's going to cost a lot of money. You don't know if it's going to flop or not. You don't know if people are going to enjoy any of it, if anyone is even going to hear about it. So I think this game is fantastic. It needs more publicity. You know, tell your friends about it. It was $1, not even $1. It was 99 cents on Steam during the Steam sale, and I don't think
it still could be this week.
yeah, that's right.
Keep your
Until
eyes open.
tomorrow. Tomorrow the sale will still be on. They got extended for the weekend. Check tomorrow. Check right now. If it's still 99 cents, get it.
Because it won't be I don't think it'll be a main feature. It'll be in the independent category. But just go ahead and look up Zeno Clash. You know, Zeno. So check it out. And
I mean,
yeah,
freaking 99 cents.
Yeah, I mean, for 99 cents, like, you can't go wrong. It's a full-fledged campaign game. But yeah, like you're saying about putting all the ships down, it seems like they're extremely talented and capable, and then they, with art in mind, you know, creativity in mind, they said, we are going to make something we feel is done right, done well. We don't really care about the status quo. We hope we change it.
Yeah,
And
more companies need to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is one of the many steps towards, I mean, Minecraft isn't, I don't feel like it's artfully in the direction of this game. Not saying it isn't, but because it is almost a simulator, and it's a pixely block game. Like, I don't think you can look at it artfully. But if you played from alpha, when you played it, you felt majestically deep inside of a survival game. And even though I feel like that's been lost slightly in the later iterations with so many items and fleshed out content, it almost makes the reality of it too concrete. You kind of lose that ethereal aspect of Minecraft. But they've taken the idea and ran with it, and it's super successful and super accessible. And I think this is more towards the artful, story-driven side of that sort of idea. Going out on a limb and hopefully making it really sing.
All right, so along with the updates in releases. Now, this isn't necessarily releases, but CDprojekt Red is going to showcase their first trailer for Cyberpunk 2077. This is a RPG, going to be single-player and multiplayer, I believe, and it's intended for mature audiences. It's they set this in a corrupt and tech-advanced world during the year of 2077. It's going to be the story is going to be multi-threaded, and it's going to take place in a sandbox environment in a place called Night City. So the RPG mechanics are based off your old pen and paper RPG systems. Think Dungeons and Dragons. And equipment in the game, it's going to be based on 50 years progress that mankind has taken to that point. I mean, I'm really excited for a cyberpunk styled game, and from the sounds of it, and from or CD Projekt's track record, it's going to be a rather brilliant game.
Yeah, you don't
I mean,
hear much flaming on The Witcher. It's just people go like, "Yeah, it's not for me." Basically, is
yeah.
their argument is usually falling under "it's not for me."
Hmm.
But I mean, when I first saw The Witcher 2 screenshots and videos, I was like, "Is this a cinematic?" Because it almost is like Forge Light with how raw and prismatic a lot of the lighting and stuff is, and it just blew me away. And for them to be making a game which to me sounds like Deus Ex, basically, like if you were just be like, it's like Deus Ex meets The Witcher, you know, in a sort of open world sandbox
That's a good
environment.
example, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, the guys who made The Witcher making a Deus Ex esque game, or like a Ghost in the Shell esque game, sold. You have me. Like,
Yep.
show me. Go ahead. Let's do this.
And with The Witcher, so they've announced development on The Witcher 3,
Mm-hmm.
and surprisingly, it is further along development than I thought. It is going to come out, what was it, early this year?
Yeah, early
Unveiled, yep.
2013, which is mind-boggling.
It, oh yeah, I mean, Witcher 2 it just came out last year,
Mm-hmm.
and they're still making content for it, which I want to reiterate how great of a company this is.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so they put out The Witcher 2 in a kind of buggy state, not unlike Fallout games from Bethesda, but they patched it. But not only did they patch it, they brought a content update that basically added another half of a single player game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was done with the same care that they made the initial game. And it was for free. You could get The Witcher 2 and immediately update to the enhanced edition. The same thing applied to The Witcher 1. When they made their update and patched that, they brought in new content and gave it for free. They love their PC market. They're not afraid of piracy. They don't care about piracy. Piracy, for one, gives them publicity because this game is amazing. People want to try it. They will pirate it, and the people that really love this company end up buying it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Their bottom line does not get hurt. These guys know what they're doing. They love their PC gamers. I love them.
Yep. And just to note on that, if you play pirated games, which I disagree with, if you ever want to see content or a sequel and you haven't paid for that game, you should be ashamed of yourself. Because that is just entitlement, and you should want to help them make that game, to feed their families, to feed their creativity, so you can play the game. I think that's the only example of being fair in business, is supporting things you genuinely want and experience and don't need. It's just just an addition to your life that makes it better. These awesome games. So support them.
Support your devs.
Yeah.
100% agree. Also, on another thing I would like to point out is that some of these companies should really make demos or trials,
Yeah.
so that people can at least get familiar with what it is they're dumping their $40, $50, $60 on
Mhm.
from day one, if they really want to make those sales. Because I think 100% is what makes a game initially is how accessible it is.
Mm-hmm.
Can people try this out and decide for themselves if they want it, rather than go in blind and make this bet that they don't know is going to pay off?
Yeah, it's almost weird because in the PlayStation 1 to pre 360 era, demos were for everything. You could demo any game. Like, there was on a CD, it would come in magazines, you could download it, whatever it was. It was on other
Oh, yeah.
games. Everything had a demo. They just don't do that anymore. And it's almost like either they know it's going to be good and street cred will sort of take the way, or advertising will take the way, or it's bad and they're going to show 15 screenshots and previs stuff on YouTube and trick you into buying it.
Or edited material that
Yeah.
is just selling you the wrong thing, or
Mm-hmm.
not what you're paying for.
Yep.
AKA War Z.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, I think War Z and then PlanetSide are good examples. War Z is this sort of previs type edited cinematic garbage. Not cinematic like, movies, but like artfully taken, set up scenes. And you have PlanetSide, which, one of their websites is on those kind of almost bare bones websites. And so someone who knows nothing about the game, doesn't bother looking at videos or anything, we'll just look at the website and be like, oh, cool, it's kind of like War Z or something. Like, it's just a bunch of, like, it's almost like they're not feeding you enough information. And then if you look at videos or go, actually download the game, it's an explosion of content and just, I think, mastery of the actual genre that they've chosen. That sort of free to play, pay to accessorize sort of a genre.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting how much money people will pay on advertising and then not even bother making their own website, deliver the content sort of necessary
Oh yeah.
to push these things. But yeah,
Oh my. Yeah.
I'm utterly excited for a sort of it's called cyberpunk, so I'll just say cyberpunk 2077.
It's gonna be really interesting, I think. And the mature theme that they run with, I love it.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
appeal to my adult maturity level. I like it. Make me
Realism.
think maybe, or maybe, make me get involved with these characters. Make me want to know more.
What I think
CDprojekt does that well.
Because, Dragon Age, I really love Dragon Age Origins. I thought it was really well, and I wasn't a fan of Dragon Age 2 because it just felt like they made a console sequel, and it took away all these sort of min-maxing and character behaviors that you could program in terms of combat, and that made me sad, and it felt really linear, but that's my opinion.
100% linear. I had no fun with Dragon Age 2.
Yep.
Origins. Love it.
The sexual encounters and stuff in Dragon Age, it was like, ooh, a sexual encounter, not unlike in Mass Effect. Go figure. BioWare, looking at you. So, don't add. For one thing, it's controversial. Do I think it should be? No. Is it? Yes. Don't add controversial stuff that almost is the equivalent in forms of impact as an Easter egg, Like, there could be a name carved in a tree of a dev that is as important as the sex scenes in BioWare games. And that, to me, is not how you should.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the difference. Like, it makes sense in that game. 100% makes sense. And then in Mass Effect, it was like almost a selling point. You were muted? That's not good. Let's hope.
He like randomly cut out, and I was like,
I don't know why. Should be back up now. Hopefully.
Okay, I think I see you. Black screen in the back?
Yeah.
Okay, yep. You're up.
Yeah. Can you hear me? You can? Okay, so we're back. So we just finished talking about The Witcher 2, and there should have just been a black screen in the middle of the stream and for the recording. And if there's a podcast that we edit, it'd probably just take all this out.
That's that, and then that. All right. So we were talking about basically sex in video games in these two, Witcher 2, Mass Effect, and how they're handled. Now, we have a game that is blatantly just about sex. Now, I don't know too much about this, so go ahead.
Yep, let me just tag in the tab. It should be here now. Okay. Dunk. Okay. So this is a game if you're familiar with Steam at all, you should be aware of like Project Greenlight, where they are trying to have indie games sort of pushed to the user by the developer. So basically, if there were to be a new indie game, like let's say I made an indie game, I could then present it to Steam, and it could be put on Project Greenlight, and you could basically vote on it to whether or not it would be put on Steam, so you could buy it. So this game, Seduce Me, I like the title, Seduce Me, the too steamy for Steam sex game. So for me, I'm always talking about where is the actual like sex content in games. Like that's a huge part of human day-to-day interaction that is just like wiped off the drawing board of video games. Yet, like I always like to point out, I can go into almost any game and get extra points for putting your brain on the ground with an assault rifle. It cutting your throat, I get even more points. Like killing you from behind, assassinating you, dirty murdering tactics, I get special rewards for. And then games that are a little bit past dating simulators, that go into an actual pursuing sex, they're just too taboo. Nope, I'm not going to do it. In terms of like, developers and publishers and distributors like Steam, GameStop, things like that. The internet is full of sex games. There's tons of websites and things you can go to, but it's seedy territory. It's, for one thing, frowned upon by our culture, which is like, okay, whatever. And then you can't really get it from any reputable source, nor is it something that is has the, I'll call, proper funding to make a quote-unquote good product. But this is a game that's fully functional. Nothing wrong with it. It is a fully functional sort of based on more or less the Japanese style of dating simulators, but it's, very much about getting to the end point of sex. And it was put on Greenlight, and then I guess Steam actually played it or something and realized it was basically a sex sim and removed it. Now, this is just, for one thing, generated tons of free advertising for them and is on their website where they're selling it. But at the same time, I can't help but be bewildered by the lack of sexual content and sex games in the sort of industry and gaming climate and a whole entity. How do you feel about it?
It's an archaic social stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Like, society is to the point where it's so accepting of people's nature, of what it is we actually like. And this is one of our more animalistic behaviors is we're attracted to the opposite sex. We want to do these dirty things with the opposite sex. In video games, I guess if it's not tasteful or artsy, quote unquote, then it's, I mean, you're not allowed to sell it anywhere really, unless you are doing it on some 18 plus website or on your own website. To me, it's something that should be part of society, part of video games. Video games are a huge part of society now.
So here's where I think the problem is sort of hit the wall or stemming from. For one of my real confusion comes from if you read any of the old news of games and violence, like Mortal Kombat and stuff, the ESRB really came out of the whole like Mortal Kombat era of gaming.
Oh yeah.
So basically games were on the verge of just being like outlawed altogether in the United States, pretty much. And then they made the ESRB, which has been touted as the best media rating system in, I believe, the world by most governing societies. That it's like, yeah, ESRB, best thing for rating media there is. And
I really think
it's really good. So
yeah,
basically all that Mortal Kombat lawsuits and stuff just like gone. Like, who cares? ESRB's here, use your parental guidance, good to go. And I agreed with that, and I thought that was a very good resolution, especially in the court situation. They go, oh, there's a rating system now, who cares? And there is an adult-only rating that is never on anything. It's only on sex games that are only distributed from the developers' websites, and they actually go and get a rating, and I think that's really good of them. And it's adult only, which is an actual rating, something that can be sold in a store like GameStop. They just choose not to. So, obviously GameStop goes, whoa, people don't like this idea. We're not going to distribute it. But I think the main point is people still think video games, comics, and animated cartoons and movies are meant for kids.
I mean, yeah,
And
these ratings clearly 100% say, no, it's not for a
yeah,
child.
adult only. Like you can't this AO adult only sex like drug. It's sex, drugs, and something else. Like what more specific thing do you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, they're not hiding it. It's blatantly there on these
Mm-hmm.
games what the rating is. No one looks at it. Parents don't look at it. And once they go into their child's bedroom and sees them playing this game, they get their panties in a bunch and just they go apeshit over
Mhm.
this. It's your own fault
Mm-hmm.
for not looking at this content, not looking at the rating, not informing yourself of what it is you're buying your child.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you got companies that don't want to deal with that, basically. Is they don't want to deal with it, so they're not gonna sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Is
And
really what
I
they're doing.
think in let's just throw out a number, 20 years. I feel like this most likely won't be a problem anymore because we will be basically like people our age who grew up on Call of Duty basically and Mortal Kombat are going to be in charge of the world.
Yes,
And
I agree with that.
the porno, internet porn world will be completely different. I can't even really imagine how different it'll be. It won't be this taboo, like, oh, I got a virus tonight. Let me tell you why. Like, it's going to be. There's going to be things like Steam, or even if Steam's around and or changes, they will be distributing these type of things. They will, like, because it's going to not be taboo anymore. It's not going to, because the people who run GameStop, I'm going to go ahead and say they're probably mid to later aged men. They don't care if there's a sex game sold. They do not care. But they do care about having to go to meetings every single day for months at a time and dealing with lawsuits about parents freaking out that their kid has a sex game that they don't know how they got, even though they drove them there, were on the cell phone talking while the kid bought it. And they go, yeah, that's fine, that's fine. The guy at GameStop was like, what? This says strong sexual content, nudity, strong language, use of drugs, adult only, whatever. So the blame's being passed to everyone, and I also don't think it's appropriate at any level.
It isn't. People aren't taking accountability for what they're doing. It's grow up, be the parent you're supposed to be. I mean, you could argue that people that are selling the games should be telling the parents, the children, or denying children these games because they are not rated for their age, which is, I would agree with them not allowing children to buy these games, and I don't think they're even allowed to buy anything that isn't for their age.
You have to be 17 to get mature, I think.
Yeah, something. Is it? Yeah, 17.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's basically 17 mature games, 18 tobacco and like voting, and then 21 drinking. And I would go at 17, I would go to buy mature games. Like, you're not 18. I'm like, I'm also buying a mature game, so I can take this now. Thank you.
Yep.
They didn't even know their own rules, which that's sad that the employees of electronic stores like Best Buy, Circuit City, when it still existed, GameStop probably was more. This was in a Circuit City, and tooth and nail I was fighting with a group of people that I was like, I'm 17, I can buy this, look it up, and they just wouldn't do it. And finally, I had the manager involved or whatever, and it was like, how are you going to deny people a product that I'm legally allowed to have? Like that, it boggled my mind.
It's a lack of education on their part or
Which-
the people above them. It's
And honestly, you could have a game like this in a GameStop, and they could put one of those little black pieces of plastic in front of it, where it covered everything but the Xbox 360 like banner with the title, and just like at a gas station when there's porno mags, and they could cover up almost the whole thing, and someone would say, "What's that?" And they could be like, "Oh, you want to see it? Can I see your ID?" And then you could look at it, and it's behind the black plastic. You don't need to have a freaky, creepy seller with people go and buy used garments and things. You can keep it extremely classy.
Right.
instead of having to have this weird G-rated sexual experience in games or a complete devoid sexual experience in games. Yeah, like the romances that are in most games now, especially in Western games where this is most taboo, it's weird that you'll be in a situation where you're like, oh, I'm probably going to like hook up with that girl or something, and then it's just like, I like you, and it's just like, we're done now, or
Yep.
kiss and then murder. You know, if this is Mass Effect 3 and aliens are invading Earth, I'm probably not gonna just kiss a girl and I'm happy, I'm good to go. You know.
Yeah, that's not happening.
And
Not the day
then
before you die.
this brings up a good point. The God of War franchises, they all have a sex simulator built into them. The camera goes away, you hear things happening, and you're basically controlling things like a nightstand shaking and trying to get like the vase to fall off the nightstand by vigorous joystick tapping.
Yep.
That is pushing things in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, we'll eventually get to the point where we're actually watching them and not the vase.
Yep.
And I want society to grow up to that point. I can't wait for that day.
And I will say, even though I think the sort of lead up and end result of the sex parts of like the Mass Effect games are just lame and pointless, the way they do them actually show them, where it's like silhouetted and like, you know, the whole like legs intertwined, like, oh, there's no actual nudity shown sort of thing, just man butt. That is also a step in the right direction, because you see man butt and all nude sides, but it's the right direction for breaking the stigma, and then either being, because I think the stigma and the sort of like, we shouldn't touch that, once that's gone, you're not going to have every single game be some dirty, raunchy sex sim. There will be small things growing towards more artful, meaningful, actual encounters with people.
Like gasp, humans will be
Oh,
humans.
Human emotion. So I think that's the gist. Is this game probably is closer to a sex simulator. It's probably meant to be a more pornographic type of experience. However,
I would say so, yeah.
a game like The Witcher could have had a far more meaningful, or even a James Bond game. Yeah, kids like those games, but a huge aspect of James Bond is sexual encounters, and they're not in those
The
games
Bond girls,
at
yep.
all. So it intrigues me that video games where you can murder people, no real sexual encounters.
Yeah, near future will be a shift within our lifetime.
Everybody will be.
I mean, if anything, will be the ones making this change. Who knows?
And this leads us to our next section. MMO news. More specifically, more sex content.
Oh yeah.
So
Getting hot and steamy over there?
this comes straight from the developer blogs for the State of the Game #2 for the Old Republic, Star Wars: The Old Republic. And for me, I'm a huge MMO fan. I've been playing since I was like 10 years old, so that's, 15 years ago, playing Ultima Online and EverQuest and subsequent games like Anarchy Online, Star Wars Galaxies, and things to follow. In the old games like Ultima Online, when you're first playing, everything is insane. You can't believe any of the stuff is in a video game. It is essentially The Sims Online meets medieval times. It was amazing. And then, after you think you have a good grasp of the game, you stumble upon someone getting married in the game. There's a GM in the game, a game master, who would be wearing... They looked like a character from... what was that game that you used like half the keyboard and you're a little wizard on Steam?
I do not know.
Oh, man. You could, like, combine spells. Crap. Anyways, you're just the GMs were big, shrouded, hooded figures that could, like, do anything in the game. They literally could rip apart the space-time continuum and do anything. And they would come
Demigods
down,
of the
and
game.
they would marry people. And I thought that was crazy, and I couldn't even grasp if I was witnessing a cinematic or if they were characters, and they'd have big feasts. It was really crazy, and it made the game crazy real. And eventually you find out those are people, and a lot of them actually in real life would go and get married because they fell in love in an MMO. And I've experienced people getting married, meeting, dating, having relationships, getting divorces, having marital affairs inside of MMOs. It is this huge subculture that a lot of people don't understand. And they almost always had some form of marriage included. But as of sort of the World of Warcraft era where people were trying to compete with World of Warcraft, they've been cutting features tremendously. However, now tons of games have been adding back or introducing marriage features like Rift, now Star Wars The Old Republic. More importantly, this is allowing for same-sex, gay, homosexual marriages, which, good. I think games span the whole world. They should really attract all audiences, and I don't think, I personally could care less if gay marriage is a thing at all, let alone in a video game, whatever. So I'm glad they're pushing for that specific thing, the same-sex marriages in the game, and more importantly that they're adding the wedding thing back into MMOs, because it's an insanely interesting, I think, specific thing to MMOs that I was sad that they started not including in them.
Yeah, and then now you got a game that is currently in beta, I believe, The Age of WuShu, which has been tagged as the Ancient China EVE Online.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone is familiar with EVE Online, it's like space spreadsheet the game, basically. They're adding weddings
Mm-hmm.
or the ability to get married. Now, the way they're handling it though is you go to this NPC, you go through this catalog of women, and the one that you find the most appealing, you buy. Which, given the time,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I can understand that. Buy your wife. If she agrees with your offer, then you get married.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a time where things were done very differently than they are today.
Oh, yeah.
And they could actually still be, I think things like this are still done in the less developed countries. But again, wedding is back, or weddings, marriage is back. And I like it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes this online relationship change with some people. I mean, granted, there would be like a dude marrying some other dude just because they're friends and maybe there's a benefit to it, and so they want to reap the rewards, which is, fine. None of this is concrete stuff. You're not getting legally married.
Right.
This is just in the game. There's no actual binding agreements or anything like that. But yeah, again, it's exciting to see this come back. Hopefully it becomes more prevalent. It adds another facet to many games.
Mm-hmm. If anything, in a game like The Sims, for example, you can marry somebody, have a kid, and then you get the family expansion. You have just hours of more content. So marriages, children, in an MMO, usually it's another person you're dealing with, and to have a kid, it'd be weird to have that be an AI character, but it's entirely plausible. Usually they just wouldn't do it. So if anything, it's just adding more content, and it's realistic content to a life simulator, which is an MMO, really. So making MMOs more realistic to the actual environment they're taking place in, I think, only broadens the horizon for MMOs as a whole genre. Just like how one of the other main features I'm saddened that they've really taken out of most MMOs is the inclusion of player-owned property, housing, things like that, and
Yes.
they're also making a comeback.
Oh yeah. Got Rift. They got Rift. Literally gives you a sliver, which is like a small rift that you open up, and you have your housing in there. I mean, it's separate from the world that you live in, but they give you a home. EverQuest 2 has very detailed player housing. What else? Player housing. Okay, so now we're getting games that allow you to build your home. Minecraft is a big one that would point you into the whole, I'm going to build me a castle, and I'm going to live there.
Yep.
Now we got games coming out like ArcheAge. This is a Korean MMO that has been in development for years and has only just gone open beta
5 days
in
ago.
Korea. 5 days ago, yep. And they have a big focus on crafting homes, lands. You can make a town. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's the system they have in place for making your own home, making your mark on the land
Mm-hmm.
is huge. Very detailed, very, well, I wouldn't say very complex, but it
Right.
has some complexity to it. And I mean, Algol knows more about the whole deal.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it's really hard to glean as much information as you need from a Korean MMO. So I take what I hear in English and I try and extrapolate as much as I can. But basically, you start in the world and there are very sparse, city structures and things that you would find like in Guild Wars. So there's, big main towns. But then you can just go into the forest, chop down some wood, build a boat, go off into the ocean, find new land, and me, Eddie, all of you guys, all of our friends could start a guild and start really quarrying stone, chopping down wood, planting new forests of specific kinds of wood that we may need or whatever, and then basically making our own ecosystem slash. It's not like Minecraft where you like literally terraform the world and change the world, but the world, the terrain is there. You take the resources you need, build boats, and then build houses, castles, towns, walls, catapults, and things to then take other people's stuff. And it's like Guild Wars where you kind of actually structure and create the world that you're living, fighting, dying for. I I love that. All I want to do is have player housing in MMOs. It's my favorite thing. I want to make castles. I want to have huge guilds, and I want the in-game content to revolve around actually expanding what you own. It's all about grinding. If you're grinding only to level up and get a better sword, what's the point? Don't you want a huge castle that you can then like have people come try to take it and you just like decimate them? That's my MMO in game. And
adding purpose to the grind.
yeah, actually, because it's all about the possessions. Like in Diablo, it's all about your epic weapons and armor. Well, okay, in the MMO, there should be the next tier. The next tier is personal property. Well, that is literally property, real estate, housing. And then you throw a guild into it, and it's castles, towns, cities that you bought and built. And I think it's huge. And so I think part of the biggest news is that this is actually now coming Western. So they're going to be bringing it to the United States eventually, and I'm sure it's going to be way longer than I'm willing to wait for. Not willing to wait for, way longer than I would even dare want to wait for. I want it, a year ago, basically. But I think this game is going to heavily, heavily push MMOs back in a direction I've been craving since World of Warcraft came out, basically.
Yeah, I've seen the footage, I've read the articles, I've seen the screenshots. This game is that game that you've been waiting
Mm-hmm.
for us.
And it
And
really
I can,
has solid combat.
it's very solid and very expansive. The options available to you. You're not locked into any set class that you choose from the start at character creation. You can reskill yourself, not unlike Rift,
Mm-hmm.
and be an entirely different character. It's amazing. The combat is done really well, I think. I haven't actually had the chance to play this, and I don't think I will for at least a year and a half, when they finally get a English beta of
Mm-hmm.
some sort. But it's looking very solid. It is. I mean, if you look at the graphics, it has really good graphic
Mm-hmm.
fidelity. Graphic aesthetics are very nice to look at. It looks good. It looks like it's gonna play good, or I should be using well. It's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be okay. Now I can use good. It's gonna be a good game. These wells and goods. Um, it's exciting, and
Mm-hmm.
we have a link to more content,
Yep.
so you can see a sewer dungeon, early sewer dungeon, 3 people. I mean, it's not even a traditional party size of 5 tackling on this dungeon, and it's not even a traditional Holy Trinity tank DPS healer party that's going on, even though they do have a tank.
Right.
Because I mean, you gotta have somebody that's taking the beating. There's, in these games, it's almost necessary. Taking a beating and holding the aggro, holding the attention of the
Mm-hmm.
enemy. Um, and then they show you the market. They show you trading. They show you these cities that are in the game, the ones that you don't build,
Mm-hmm.
and it all it's all looking like it's coming together to be a really great game.
Yep.
I mean, there were over 250,000 beta downloads the day open beta um, was announced, or the date for it. I mean, beta wasn't released yet. This was just the day that they opened downloads for the beta. So, Korea, Russia, Europe, United States is looking to be the order of releases.
Mm-hmm.
I think China has it. I'm not quite sure about that.
It's either just hit China or it's very, very soon hitting China.
Right.
I think it's more of a expanding territorially. So they're actually kind of like going with the rotation of the Earth, like China,
Right.
Russia, Europe, United States, probably United States and Europe. I would imagine simultaneous, but who knows?
Yeah.
But this is going to be, I think, if it's not specifically this game, it is going to be something insanely similar to this. That's going to be the next sort of blip on the timeline in terms of MMOs. You know, you'll have Ultima Online, EverQuest, Anarchy Online, all these sort of games, and then you have like WoW, and then sort of just like a fuzzle, and then you'll have something like this that's
Yep.
going to change the gamescape.
Evolving the golden standard for MMOs everywhere. Yeah, so you're gonna see me and Algol and when this is released on there like 24/7.
Yep, join the guild, come help us build things, plant forests, and ride donkeys into justice.
Into justice.
Okay, so now we have what is actually appearing to be an amazing new game. Defiance.
If anything, it's very interesting. It's a game that's doing something I've only ever heard mentioned of another game in passing that I couldn't even begin to tell you the name of. This is a game that's going to have a TV show tie-in where one affects the other and vice versa. By that, I mean there are going to be events in Defiance. Okay, well, let's explain what Defiance is. Defiance is a third-person action shooter game. If you ever played Rift, there are events like Rifts.
And it is made by Tryon, the same developer.
Yep, same developer. Tryon Worlds. They so far have been making good games. I mean, Rift was fun. Defiance, I can't talk about it actually.
Yeah.
NDA. But from what is released, from what we have been shown by them, Defiance is looking to be one of the best third-person action shooters out there. It's gonna need some polish. It looks really good. So graphical fidelity is high. The aesthetics are good. Combat looks, I want to say, pleasing, satisfying. So the whole tie-in with it's gonna be with Sci-Fi, the channel, and there's gonna be a show called Defiance on Sci-Fi. So there will be maybe major events or things that will get voted on by the community in Defiance, the video game, or players will be tasked to do something from the show where something is going on. And depending on the player's response, whether good, negative, on choices, will be reflected in the show. Events like, say there's be a giant world boss that you have to kill in the game, which if you kill it, it'll have an impact in the show and it'll reflect what it is you've done. Also, it's not, I've heard, but I don't know if it's gonna happen, but individual players of the game may be part of the show, depending on events.
Like your character could be a
like you could be somebody in the show. Not like you, but your character.
Right.
Somebody's gonna play your character in the show.
Or at least possibly, let's say you're the first person to kill a certain boss. That might be just spoken of. Like, oh, can you believe, FNGEddie killed the crab man.
Exactly. Killed the crab people.
Crab people.
So yeah, Defiance is looking good. I'm excited to see what happens. It is going out Going to be open beta on the 18th, so we're 12 days away.
Mhm.
You can sign up now and get into the closed alpha. I believe they're not having a closed beta,
Yeah.
at least not with this timeline. I mean, 12 days.
Right.
And they're looking at a April release. This is coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
The show is coming soon. I'm excited to see how this evolves and what it is they do to connect the game with the show.
Mm-hmm. And since I haven't played the game, I don't have an NDA, so I can say what I've extrapolated from videos. Now, if you're familiar with the game Rift, there's pretty much very similar events like the Rifts, but they're more like in Gears of War, where it's like the locusts come on the ground type thing. So, the game is based on, as you can tell, a catastrophic event. So, as you can see, there's big crab monsters and things that come out of the ground and attack you. So basically, let's say nuclear warfare made a bunch of Godzilla crab, shrimp, ant things, and they're terrorizing the world, ripping it apart. So obviously it's basically a post-apocalyptic sort of setting, not total destruction, but pretty devastated. So you have this sort of, basically take Rift, make the theme Borderlands, and then it plays and shoots, not unlike a Gears of War, where it's not isometric, but over the third person over the shoulder shooting game. So you are actually running and gunning. It's not like tab targeting, A for attack, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for my skills. Like you're getting, sniper rifles, sniping. You're getting rocket launchers, shooting the ground to kill your target, or dead shotting bosses. It's an actual shooting game, and you always start with a mount. It's an ATV, so it seems to be a really interesting sort of like Borderlands MMO, really, like in a way. That's the best way I can just kind of throw it out there.
I think that would be the best comparison, yeah.
And if you've ever played, like in the olden days, olden MMO days, Anarchy Online, I feel like and even Tabula Rasa, those were sci-fi shooting MMOs that you didn't really, there was no skill involved in the shooting. It was tab target, A for attack, so you were just, randomly shoot. Like in Star Wars Galaxies, same thing. And then you had games like PlanetSide that actually introduced skill shooting. Now that's first person, so it's an entirely different setting. This is still a story-driven, kind of class-based MMO setting, but actual skill in shooting, which is, I think, paramount in new games. I don't think tab targeting really has a place in AAA titles anymore.
Not anymore. Game combat has to evolve. I mean, this is. I want to say, you started with twitch shooters, Call of Duty. They're setting a standard for combat, and this generation has grown up on that. I mean, this is what we need from games. We can't do the whole you click to move, that's slow. You want quick responsive skills. You don't want to be pressing 1, 2, 3, 4, launch those cooldowns, sit there for that animation, don't get your cast interrupted. Nonsense. I mean, that had its place. It still has its place, but I mean, games have to evolve, or specifically these MMOs have to evolve the way they let you play the game.
Exactly.
And I can say it is satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Very satisfying playing these kind of games.
I think that is a good way to skirt the NDA. I like. Now this.
All right.
Whoa. Blong. If you're not familiar with Windows 8, that is a Windows 8 notification sound for selecting all of nothing. Okay, so over at Massively, we have news of Age of Empires Online. If you're an Age of Empires fan or a fan of the game or RTSs in general, this is a big deal. It really is. Whether or not you care, I think you should if you're an RTS fan or Age of Empires fan of any capacity. They've ceased content development of Age of Empires. It's still running. They're still supporting it. People have dumped real money into it. That's the point. But they're no longer making anything for the game because I feel like the game, in terms of the monetization options and also the sort of advertising and the way they pushed it out there was a just complete flop. The monetization was kind of money grubbing and weird, yet the game was good. It was a really good game. It was super simple graphics, just like in a Warcraft kind of game, like World of Warcraft, but it worked really well. It was cartoony for the first little bit, and then you got really used to it because the gameplay, the feeling of the quality of Age of Empires really washed away your sort of like, oh, these graphics are kind of simple and cartoony, and it just kind of took those away, and you just appreciated what it was. But the game's, as of now, this game's basically dying. And I felt like since the day I heard about it, it was dying. However, I actually a couple months ago played it for about a week. I really enjoyed it. I'm a ridiculously huge Age of Empires fan. And I was satisfied with the experience. Now, constantly, they are berating you with, oh, you can level up faster, buy this. Oh, you can buy a new empire. You just go ahead and buy it. It's fine. It was constant. It wasn't I can buy to not have, I can buy an upgrade to speed up my leveling. There wasn't that involved. It was just like buy a new empire, maybe buy a new soldier, things like that. Things that weren't necessarily pay to win, but it was you cannot play the whole game without buying something, which is another example of just trying to suck money out of me. Which is not, I think, I'd rather just pay you $60 to play a new Age of Empires. Like, I don't care that it's free to play. That doesn't interest me at all. I'd rather just you make this game, charge me $60, and not make me have to. Even if I'm paying $30 for all the content I want, I still have to pay for it instead of you just making it a $60 game or a $30 game. That I don't like that. Whereas you have a game like PlanetSide that's free, and I might end up spending $4,000 in it by the time I stop playing it, and I'm like, cool.
And that's over the course of many years.
Yeah. Because of the way they present it. It's it may be pedantic and ridiculous, but that is a big deal to me, is how you actually bill the experience and hold to it. So, if you look at Ensemble, they made all the Age of Empires. They basically invented RTSs alongside of like Westwood and the Command & Conquer and Red Alert series in terms of the standard RTSs, and then StarCraft kind of came into there in the mix at some point and really got insane footing in like Korea, and therefore fueled it to kind of be bought back and forth here in the MLG sort of setting. But Ensemble was destroyed after Halo Wars because they made a really cool console RTS, and then Microsoft goes, well, what? I should make it a Halo RTS. Let's just reskin it, and they're like, what? So they had to like trim tons of features and reskin the whole game and restructure a lot of the actual mechanics and theory crafting of the game to make it fit into a Halo environment. And the result was basically a really good iPad RTS that was on the 360. It's sad, really, that Ensemble was basically destroyed by that, and this is just another example of that IP just getting trounced by them trying to make a money-grubbing play for it.
Yep. Sad story. Publishers ruin good games because, hey, I want to make more money.
Mm-hmm. And I think that brings up the point of, if you're going to make a game like this, just the sort of free-to-play buy features type model, is it better to make a new IP? Because are you offending longtime fans who would just be willing to buy the game? Are you offending them by trying to possibly suck more money out of them and possibly turning a childhood memory of theirs into, whoring it out? So I think it's an interesting situation, whereas you then have PlanetSide, which I also love PlanetSide. It's more of a high school memory for me. But the second one, completely free to play in every respect.
Big deal.
You have to buy camouflage and hood ornaments for your cars. Whoa, no, this really cut down on wind drag. So, it almost sounds hypocritical for me to have that argument, but at the same time, I couldn't play all of Age of Empires online without paying money, and I have paid money in PlanetSide to speed up the leveling process and to obtain items that have absolutely no play on my dealing and receiving of damage, basically, in the game.
And to me, like locking contents to small microtransactions is just a just a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that. You don't lock content like that. I mean, it's one thing to be like this giant expansion that's adding large elements to the game and asking people to pay
Mm-hmm.
30, $40 for the expansion, but it has to be an expansion. It can't be a small content update like say for Rift. Rift 100% free content updates. They will throw you a 10-man raid and a 20-man raid all
Mm-hmm.
for free. Now, they want to make a entirely new zone,
Yeah.
a giant mass continent, not unlike the one that you're already on. Add, I think, like 12 more levels, 11, 10 more levels, something like that. Add a new raid or a new couple of raids, new dynamic events, new everything. I mean, straight up expansion. That's okay to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be willing to pay for that. And if I don't want it, I don't have to buy it. If I'm okay with the content I'm on as for the initial purpose or purchase. But gating content with microtransactions like that 10-man raid, asking $10 to get that 10-man raid unlocked, asking $10 to get that 20-man raid unlocked, that's not okay at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, me, like, that was a personal experience actually. Like, me and a bunch of guildies, this just would we wouldn't do it
Mm-hmm.
ever. We're not gonna pay for this small amount of content. Um, and then have this expansion come out and then have to pay for that too. Like at first it was an initial fear, but it never happened. That content was given for free.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad. I mean, games should not be doing that. Age of Empires, I mean, it's like shooting yourself in the foot. You don't do it. It's dumb. But yeah,
I feel like
that's
most gamers our age, the sort of like mid-20s, for the most part, when I like all my friends who I consider to be actual gamers, not just your run-of-the-mill like I play Call of Duty, I have played Mass Effect or whatever. Like you play games very often and you're relatively familiar with gaming culture. They all know Age of Empires. It's just something that was around when they grew up. They also all know Red Alert. These two
mm-hmm.
huge RTSs, and it's crazy to me that somehow someone was given the go-ahead to just dump all over a classic IP that was untarnished. I mean, the 1 and 2 were amazing. The third one, the one I just gave you for the holidays, it
Thank
is
you.
very much a sequel to the second one. It is not like a new, huge, like whoa, innovative, like new game. It was in an era right before. You kind of have like Crysis, for example, that just made all of gaming shoot forward like 5 years faster than it was going to without it. Graphics cards, everything just shot forward to keep up with Crysis alone,
Yep.
and that was a huge deal. And then you have games like Age of Empires 3, which was sort of on the early phases of the Windows. What is it? What do they even call it? I have it right here. The games for Windows. Like if you've ever used games for Windows for things like Section 8 or anything like that, it is a really weird experience. It's like on the cusp of just like crippling your system. You could have the fastest computer ever, and the games for Windows is like, if you've ever used the Ubisoft launcher for like Anno 2070, or sort of, if you ever, before Origin, they had the EA Game Link or whatever it was called, where if you were playing like Battlefield 2070, you had to use this sort of unified launcher thing before it was an actual game store, and it was just sort of a key logging account downloaded on your desktop. So you basically open it and you'd have like all your EA games and you could launch them, and it was incredibly cumbersome, used a lot of resources, crashed all the time. You couldn't uninstall it. It was like malware. It was so crazy. And then Origin, and now I'm not a huge fan of Origin, but it is 4,000% better than those olden days. And I love Steam, obviously, but then you have the Games for Windows thing, which is the same sort of thing. Like when you open a Games for Windows game and you're playing it, at the top of the screen there's this little tiny button, and when you click on it, it basically, you're inside of Xbox Live all of a sudden. and it's this overlay that's always going, that's always just churning and taking up a lot of resources, and it's really weird. And this was one of the first games that kind of utilized all the features, and it was just like really clunky and cumbersome, and it was, or Age of Empires 3, and it was really clunky and cumbersome and kind of bizarre. And this took all that stuff in the right direction, but then they tacked on all of the weird microtransactions that just kind of murdered the whole experience. And then they also really tried to push from an odd sort of MLG status of the game. And it was on Twitch. They had their own Twitch like main channel where like the devs would stream it like all day. It was weird, and it was like, dudes, you're just pushing all the wrong directions. You had a game that should have just been able to sell itself tenfold. And to me, I was in the beginning, I was highly offended, and after the whole thing was like a year old, I checked it out and I actually enjoyed it, which was the saddening part. Because it was
Yeah,
built
now it's looking
so
like it's
weird.
gonna be closed.
Yep. Unless they do some sort of MMO restructuring to sort of fit in line with like League of Legends, PlanetSide, then either just they're dead.
Yeah.
They're bleeding out.
Yep. This is the first step.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like other examples. Tor, the Old Republic.
Mm-hmm.
They should have just made Tor or KOTOR 3.
Yep.
Should have just done it. And basically I played Tor like it was the next one. I didn't do any of the initial MMO aspects of it. I played my story, leveled up my dude, played the side quests, and I wanted that experience. And then I dabbled in the online stuff with where you would, PvP, you got all this player economy and all that. But they should have just gone with KOTOR because now, in less than a year, they flopped and had to go free to play. And now their decisions with the free to play structure are also really bad. They lock characters to a certain amount that you can have. I think it's like 2. One of the weirdest and I think worst decisions is restricting the interface, your UI. This is a game you need about 3 hotbars for everything that you're using. I would say at the minimum, and they only allowed you to use 2. If you paid them, they'll give you access to as many as you want, or as many as they have in the game. But I mean, you got on a restriction list, and it's just poor decision after poor decision. And it's unfortunate because this could have been a great game. But now it's, again, like the Age of Empires. I mean, they're not going to stop content development because it's still making them some money.
Yeah.
Another game that isn't even released, The Elder Scrolls Online. Like, who wanted an MMO for Elder Scrolls? I didn't. I thoroughly enjoyed playing Oblivion, Skyrim. Haven't touched Morrowind, but I liked what I saw. I didn't need an online component, but they're making an MMO. Granted, what they're doing with it looks exciting.
It sounds amazing.
So I mean,
Yep.
I don't know. I think it has to be released for really get a good idea, but
Absolutely.
some of these games don't need an online version. They were just better off being sold the way they were normally sold. They were doing just fine. If it ain't broken, don't fix it type of mentality, but at the same time, innovate. But don't go in the wrong direction like this.
And it's like, we always talk about with Guild Wars 2 being one of the best examples of how to price structure a game. Sell me the game, cool, good to go. And then to keep the game afloat without subscription fees, charge me for XP boosts. I don't think XP boosts are a bad thing because some people are going to literally play 18 hours a day for the next few years because of however they manage to pull that off, they're going to do it. And if those dudes want to pay $10 a week or whatever to have XP boosts, okay, they've already just completely committed their lives to this situation, and they're going to level up and hit a level cap on every single character slot they have before I get to that level. Who cares if they do it a little bit faster? They've already just like gone that way. They're already full force, pedal to the floor, So
Yep.
Okay, they level faster than me because the thing is, someone's going to be playing more than me anyways. They're already going to be ahead of me. It doesn't matter if someone is ahead of them. And, Guild Wars, PlanetSide, League of Legends, they charge you mainly for, dye packs, skin packs, aesthetic things that, just,
Don't impact the gameplay.
Oh, yeah, they don't affect the game at all. And then the good ones, like those three, they will also let you accrue in-game currency and or points, skill points, and trade them for either in-game currency to buy things from the NPCs and stuff, or to then translate it into buying the exclusive content, which is amazing. Like, let's say it takes you a week to get 1,000,000 gold, and you can translate that into basically $5, and $5 can get you a dye pack or a character skin or something. So it's an extremely heavy time sink, and I guess the idea falls into you're devoted to the game, it's cheap and affordable, you'll either bring friends in eventually, because you have to have at least one friend in your life, and he's going to be wondering what you're doing all day long, and you bring him in, and that's more money, more possible spreading, good word of mouth. It's just good business in my eyes. It's a business. Why not make it something you would actually want to do, not something where the company goes, okay, Dev, would you be willing to spend, let's say, $30, let's say $10 a month on PlanetSide guns? And they go, oh, sure, just to try and, please their boss. No, I feel like they went, no, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I would like to be able to earn them actually in the game or pay $5 for them,
That right there actually is a big deal. Being able to earn the cash shop items
Mm-hmm.
with regular gameplay without ever having to spend a dime.
I think it's a huge deal.
PlanetSide 2 and Guild Wars 2 are like the gold standard for the free-to-play model, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, Guild Wars 2 is you buy it and then you have that free-to-play, or you have that microtransaction bit, which is completely fine by me. It's games like when Secret World first launched, it did 3 things. You bought it, $60 title, you paid a subscription every month to continue playing it,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a cash shop on top of that.
But the thing about
Now,
Guild
as you can
Wars,
see,
though, the unique thing is they are, I think, the only one that actually lets you, with in-game currency, buy the aesthetic items that are meant to only be paid for.
Yep.
Because there's a coin to currency translation, which, with that sort of leeway, I think the down payment basically is okay.
Yeah, it's fine. And I mean, you can see what happened with Secret World.
Mm-hmm.
They are no longer subscription based. I think it's optional. They still have a cash up because they need to stay afloat. And the initial buy payment is $20 or $30,
Mm-hmm.
$30, something like that. But it's on sale for like 20 something on Amazon or on Steam. And for Steam it was for the holiday sale. For Amazon, I think it's an always on sale.
Right.
But you can see it didn't work out for them. They had to rethink how they were going about things. The subscription is going to go the way of the dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's not feasible. People don't have the time to invest in these games,
Mm-hmm.
pay a subscription that they're not seeing any gains from. It's maybe you don't have access to your computer where the game is installed and you're paying a subscription. Basically, that month is out the window. You're out $15. Or maybe you're playing on vacation. You want to play one weekend, but you don't want to pony up the cash for the month. So subscription has its place, like optional benefits, the way PlanetSide 2 is doing, where it allows you to generate certs a little bit faster, XP a little bit faster, give you bonuses for how long you've been subscribed to, but it's not a game-changing element. It just allows you to get these things a little bit faster. So,
there's people who are max level in PlanetSide, and I have a subscription that my parents gave me for Christmas because I was like, I really love that game. Just go ahead and you can give me that, and they're like, cool, easy. And there's people who are max level. I'm not max level, and given this, people might have subscriptions, but either way, I have one, and I'm not you're way ahead of people. And like Eddie doesn't have a subscription, or do you?
No, I only bought 1 month for
Okay,
December.
so and I'm barely ahead of him, just maybe 10%, 15% ahead of him
Mm-hmm.
in terms of actual level. Because obviously
Yep.
I have
I'm
passive
like
certain
right
game
behind you.
things, but we're pretty much on par, and that's just because the fluctuation of our schedules that allow us to play the game,
Yep.
and or I could be doing exactly what I want in the game and not focus too terribly much on sort of grinding. And I
Yeah,
can
play
keep
the
up.
objective versus playing for the rewards.
So I think the subscription was sort of invented for Ultima Online and EverQuest, where the idea was you make the game and it's done, and they will support the game and host the servers as long as you keep paying. It made so much sense. No one had a problem paying who had the money to pay it. Like a lot of people were like, whoa, pay to play a game. Pff, you're crazy. But people who got it and wanted to play the game were like, okay, that's an amazing game. And then they started actually adding content to the games. And there would be some free expansions, some paid expansions. And people were like, this is really interesting. This is like, we're going to call these massively multiplayer online RPGs because they're crazy. And it was a huge deal. But then I think even EverQuest, I think it was EverQuest who first pioneered the like sort of loyalty in subscriptions. So, okay, not like in PlanetSide where it stacked in terms of benefits, but like they introduced you can pay for 3 months, and instead of it being 15, it's 13 a month, or you could pay for a whole year, and it's like $8 a month basically. So you're like really saving on money, and World of Warcraft and everything has really taken that and ran with it. And but then I think EverQuest even introduced an idea where it was almost like dial-up internet, where you paid as you go, and it was like $3 a day or something to play. So basically you could either play for a month for 15 or pay like $3 a day, and play for 5 and have already earned another month's time, So it was kind of like this super skewed concept of, I don't remember if you hit the $15 mark, you then unlocked the month. I don't think you did, which was the disturbing part. Either way, it was another example of like early money grubbing in MMOs and the wrong way to do it.
Yep.
And they also added a functionality where you could have on your like rating UI an option to order Pizza Hut. Go ahead and reflect on that. I'm not even kidding, by the way, to anybody who thinks I'm kidding. There was a UI to order. I'm pretty sure it was Pizza Hut from EverQuest. Hilarious.
I would have assumed Domino's, but okay.
It was one of the two, man. But it was mind-boggling. And
another
I
system,
was like,
I
that's
think.
cool, but then now I'm like, that was awful existence.
Yeah. I mean, hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
But another system that I kind of like is have you ever played DDO, Dungeons Dragons Online?
Yes.
So the way they
Seen
handle
enough
it,
of
the content is there's no subscription.
Mhm.
I think there might be optional actually, but you pay for the content you want to play when you want to play it.
Right.
And for the most part, it's pretty cheap. But like you said, you pay $3 for a day to play a game, and then eventually it adds up to not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But if the values ever get done right, I mean, it could be a pretty decent system. But I still think the PlanetSide 2 and the Guild Wars 2 are doing it right. I think more games are going to come out, and they're going to have the monetization like that. And I hope they do.
I think the way PlanetSide is really going to be victorious is the game is free, so your gateway drug is delivered, and then your greed or necessity and frustration with the game, you're either getting decimated by airplanes and you really want that anti-aircraft rocket launcher, and you're like mom and dad or whatever, or you're going to dive into your wallet, you're going to pay that $5 whatever to kill those freaking airplanes. It's going to happen. And you're either going to have to play a lot, like a couple days, a week, whatever, to unlock the rocket launcher, or drop 5 spot on it or whatever and unlock it. So right then, they've already made more money on you. You know, given you didn't buy the game. So if you take that out of the equation, though, they've already made more money on you in probably 12 hours of you first playing the game than they would have in maybe 6 months of you in a subscription game in terms of extra money. So to me, that's really interesting because it's almost like the personal greed factor is what fuels the economy of PlanetSide. And I think that's good.
Yeah.
Greed and impatience is, I think, the keys. And, you know, are the people being rewarded for that?
Now.
Sort of, but they're also being punished by actually losing dollar bills.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair.
It's fair. All right. That was that. What do we got? We got Firefly back in production?
Yeah. Question mark?
Yeah, this is new to me. So elaborate.
So it's a really interesting story of Dark Cryo Entertainment. They started making a Firefly MMO apparently with not having legal access to the IP, which, okay, what does that even mean? Like, it's sort of confusing. I don't know every single detail, but I remember hearing about this a while ago. You know, Fox Entertainment owns Firefly, and I remember hearing that someone was making this, and production was halted because Fox was like, you don't own the IP to that. So at some point, either Fox actually looked at the game, or through negotiations worked out something happened to where now Fox has basically given them the go-ahead to keep making the game. Basically, like, I suppose it's along the lines of either make it, and if we like it, we can release it, or make it. And if you can pay for all of it, then sure, release it, whatever. Like, we're taking our cut, though. So there's a Kickstarter to fund this game. I believe that's what, at least a Kickstarter. Yeah, so they're going to be kickstarting Firefly Online MMO. I'm utterly intrigued. I don't know what exactly this is going to entail. It's all sort of weird gaming politics and IP related type stuff, but a Firefly MMO could be really awesome. It's a super awesome IP. To me, it's the sort of thematic environment that a lot of people just go ahead and say, I want this sort of idea, and they just go steampunk with it. I feel like they took what I like out of steampunk, dirty pantaloons, revolvers, and machinery, and didn't give people brass monocles and water guns with bolts glued on them. So I think this is actually a promising game because it appeals to the steampunk sort of, to me, what I like as steampunk, the just old world meets. Because, you know, if we have laser guns, people aren't going to be living in, you know, capsule corp houses like in Dragon Ball Z. They're going to be still living in, like, wooden shacks in the forest with laser guns. You know, the electronics are going to be electronics, and then houses are still going to be brick and mortar, whatever, and you're still going to wear clothes made of cotton and what have you. So the Firefly IP is awesome.
Yeah, I've never watched it. Every time I say that, I am told, you heathen, you need to get on that. Yeah, if you're excited, chances are I'll be excited.
Yeah, I mean, Firefly
Pretty similar
is basically like the Wild West. I'm not a huge cowboy fan, but there's parts of it I like. And then the sort of steampunk idea of old world meets new world in a realistic manner. There's that. And then there's also the sort of Eve aspect of the hyperspace corporations overarching the whole thing. So, you know, it's like basically Firefly is like a TV show, movie IP based around what it would be like to live on Tatooine.
Nice.
So, you know, adobe huts and spaceships. That's like the best way I can explain it. Imagine like Han Solo, not really Han Solo, but, you know, like a Tatooine smuggler, his day to day, the Outer Rings. This is what this is. And so that could be a really awesome game.
Yeah.
So I'm excited just to see where this unfolds. Because, I mean, Firefly IP and Kickstarter in a game, That could be millions of dollars just dumped into it like immediately.
Yes, would agree. So along the lines about being back in production, we have a revival of an MMO that was shut down after going free to play and having next to no success.
Mm-hmm.
Earthrise is being redeveloped, retooled. It's going to be a spiritual successor of itself. It's going to play better, look better, generally be better. It is. You can apply for what is it? The alpha.
Yeah, I think it was alpha.
All right. So they want to bring back this game. They think it's worth bringing back, and I think it's worth checking out. It's going to be 100% free to play on launch. So I mean, why the hell not?
It seems to
N-
be the same sort of development story, like a global agenda, basically.
Yeah,
You know, a
there you
completely
go.
failed launch and everything, and then picked up by somebody else, and hopefully the torch is carried in the right direction with a few simple fixes to streamline the process.
Yep.
Because clearly someone thought this game was worth enough to take the content, restructure it slightly, change like the UI and overlay to then make a actual product. So for global agenda, I was very impressed with where they took it. I thought they did a great job. High res people have really impressed me with all their products. And
For me, it's excluding tribes.
see, I get where people are coming from, but I'm a big tribes fan, and I want there to be more and more content for tribes. And I feel like since like you look at like Smite and MOBAs are inherently cash cows just somehow. I don't know exactly why. And
It's the way it's the design. I mean,
oh yeah, I mean it just I like MOBAs, but for me I wouldn't be like, oops, I just paid $200 on MOBA characters, you know.
mhm.
Whereas I know a lot of people who have done that.
Oh yeah.
So you know, Smite they're putting tons of focus into, and it's obvious because as a business standpoint, that's super smart. And for tribes, the game's there, it's working, and if they keep supporting it and keep adding content, it could just build and build and build into something really good. But as a bare bones mechanic, it really feels like Tribes 2 for me, and I like that. So I have it installed. I played it a lot for a week or two. I haven't played it much lately, but keep adding content. I'll keep coming back.
Hmm.
But I totally see where people are coming from on Tribes.
I think for me was I never played the original,
Right.
so I don't even have that experience under my belt. And then coming into Tribes too, it's this shooting experience that I've never experienced before, and I I come from Call of Duty style shooters,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. So Call of Duty, Battlefield, all of that. I'm used to that kind of combat, and I'm really good at that kind of combat. And then I get thrown into Tribes, and I get my ass handed to me left and right by people I don't even see coming at me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I grew up on like Unreal Tournament basically.
Yeah, I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the big difference. Is I never had those like really. Oh, what's the name for them?
No, it's a Twitch shooter.
There's another name that's used to describe them, but I don't remember that right now.
Yep.
Anyways, I didn't come from that. I
Mm-hmm.
came from these World War II games,
Yep.
and so it was a very different experience. Something I was not familiar with, and so I couldn't play it. It was too much for me.
Right. Understandable. So in any basically any MMO at least intrigues me in some level. And when somebody wants to pick up a completely dropped, fumbled game, that means there almost has to be something worth it in it. Because it seems unlikely that somebody would want to pick up a title knowing it's terrible just to, like, okay, I mean, yes, you could, like, let's say there was a carpenter working on a table. He goes bankrupt or whatever and has to sell you the table for like $5 and you take it, you paint it or stain it, and then you sell it for like $400. Okay, yes, that makes sense, and I hope that is this situation, not the situation of the carpenter went bankrupt because he was being sued by an insurance company because his tables were giving people like rusted nails were like giving them lockjaw. So I hope it's not someone just going to be like, oh, we're going to stain this lockjaw table and turn it real quick, you know?
Right.
So I hope it's more of the actual good thing where the company just couldn't make it work, or they structured the release wrong, and someone's picking up the ball, fixing it, making it more accessible, and a good product comes out of it.
We can only hope.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then another revival and a big redesign. City of Heroes was recently shut down, even though it was petitioned by tens of thousands of people to be kept open. But I mean, in the end, it's the developers who have the final word, final say. They can't support this anymore. They're going to drop it. I mean, what can you do? Then you got Phoenix Project. It's aiming to bring it back. Basically, it's City of Heroes on CryEngine 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me screams amazing. I love CryEngine 3.
Yep.
You don't even know how much I love CryEngine 3. This engine is so good. Some games don't use it very well because they suck at making games around this engine. But the engine is really good, really solid. I mean, just take a look at the Crysis games. CryEngine from 1 to now that Crysis 3 is announced and there is gameplay footage of it, it's amazing. And then my bit about City of Heroes Revival is it was shut down before I even got a chance to play it.
Right.
It went free to play, and that allowed me to be able to play it. But I didn't have the time while it was free to play to get anywhere near it. And then I hear it's getting shut down, and then I just didn't want to invest any time into something that I won't be able to continue with. There will be no progression. And now you got this group, Phoenix Project. I am excited.
Yeah, and for me, it's almost the opposite in terms of my experience with City of Heroes. I played it from... I think I beta tested it up until Champions Online came out, and I switched over to Champions Online because it was the actual people who basically made City of Heroes. So I was trying to stick to my sort of, a little bit of dev loyalty instead of game loyalty, and I went with them. But, I played City of Heroes all the way, its entire lifespan, up until City of Villains, which was just an expansion that allowed you to play an opposing faction, and it had way better... The cities were, since it was newer, all the cities and things looked way better. So I didn't want to keep playing an old-looking game, so I just started playing as the villains, and I played all the way until up until Champions Online came out. And Champions Online hasn't done too well, really. They have gone through the whole subscription, free-to-play issue themselves. But City of Heroes did so much right, and the character customization... You didn't have armor. That did not exist. Like, you didn't have gear. It didn't exist. However, your character was not unlike, let's say you're playing a wrestling game or something, and you can completely edit the way your character looks. You could be a luchador, a cowboy, a spaceman, whatever. You could just make the character. He could be a guy literally wearing plate mail armor, but it's an aesthetic thing, no effect on anything. And he could be then any kind of character, like a magic caster. He could be skinny, he could be buff, he could be any character you wanted in any single appearance. You could have different outfits as well. And then, on top of the power sets and things you had that you chose yourself, you could then buy bonuses. So, like, let's say you're like the Human Torch kind of archetype. You could put a damage up. You'd have like 6 or so slots on a power. So you could have like 6 damage ups, or like 3 damage ups, 2 accuracies, and an energy reduction. So you would buy bonuses to your powers, which really kind of makes more sense than having a magical hood that lets you have clairvoyance and use less magic. Especially in this theme, superheroes.
I like everything I heard.
Mm-hmm. And Champions Online, which was a spiritual successor to City of Heroes, made by some of the original devs, there was 0 classes. It was all pick any power you want. And so, but there was trees that you could go into. So you could have a single-handed sword skill, a two-handed sword skill, a hammer skill, a fire blast skill, an ice blast skill, a telekinetic skill, all these skills, and you'd be spreading yourself extremely thin. Or you could go solely into the fire tree. And so if you had 2 fire skills, you unlocked a tier 2 fire skill. If you had 2 tier 2 ones, you then unlocked a tier 3. And you could go down to like tier 5, which you then have like basically a spirit bomb fireball you could summon. So you could be like ultra fire dude, or ultra sword dude, or you could be, half sword dude, half fire dude, and have the mid range on both. So that meant there was basically 10,000 different classes you could choose from, which is impossible to balance. So
And it wasn't possible.
yeah.
I mean, there is a clear cookie cutter, best of the best class sort of spec build, whatever you want to call it, in Champions Online.
Always. Every time they patch it, there's a new best build.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad because you can make like any kind of character you could ever think of visually, and that is a big deal to me personally.
Oh yeah, I had a thin business suit wearing guy with a hood, and he set everything on fire. And then I had this giant hulking behemoth of an alien-looking demon monster dude that could fly. Or no,
Yeah.
not fly. He could run
jump.
at super speed.
Oh, okay.
Run super speed. Just for the hell of it.
Mhm.
This guy looks like he weighs, I don't know, 10 tons,
Right.
and he's running around at light speed. It was amazing.
Yep.
But again, the powers were impossible to balance.
Yep. And I also feel like whoever really was making the overarching decisions had too much of the. Either there was a very, very strong conflict of creative versus business, or whoever was in charge of the business had too much creative. And he was just like, freedom for all the powers. And it inevitably crippled the game because you need to have very structured mechanics in a game to achieve balance and therefore like harmony, basically.
Which is 100% true when any kind of PvP is involved.
Mm-hmm.
PvE content, you don't need balance because, I mean, the difference between the best class and the class you want to play may be just a few points in damage. And it's okay. You can still do fine with what it is you choose. But in PvP, when you're fighting somebody with the best spec and you're fighting with the one you feel like you're going to get trumped every time. And it's unfortunate. But I'm glad to see City of Heroes coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love it to be successful. And sadly, if they had done kind of like, because the City of Villains really looked really good. It looked like a sequel to City of Heroes, but they never went back and really updated the environments of City of Heroes. So it looked a decade old. It looked really old because it was built sort of, I don't know if it came out before WoW or not, but they were built in the same time frame or same like few years time frame, and it went in the sort of realistic approach, sort of, but low fidelity. Whereas World of Warcraft went low fidelity and very stylized. So their textures were just swaths of colors and swirling textures and things. Whereas City of Heroes was this, what should have been a high fidelity game that just wasn't. It was, low res, but it worked at the time and did not age well. And then they took the exact same look into Villains with higher fidelity textures and really high particle effect, powers. Looked really good lighting engine, really murky and eerie, right on par with anything else. And they never, retroactively retrofit the graphics. Bad move.
Indeed.
And
that's one of the things that keeps you from playing an MMO.
Exactly. Which is our next point. So this article is more of a leaping off point.
Yep. So what's an MMO that you always wanted to play but never got to because something turned you off?
Well, actually, World of Warcraft. I
Okay.
never got into it originally because I was at least subscribed to the 3 MMOs. Probably EverQuest, PlanetSide, maybe even Galaxies. It could have been those, could have been Ultima Online. And that was originally because I was paying so much for other ones, I couldn't check out World of Warcraft, which I was hearing was a good game. And then down the road, I didn't get into it because it was murdering the games I loved. So I never got into it. And then it was so far along the line, 3 years later maybe, I was like, it murdered my favorite games. I will never play this game.
Yeah, I mean, I Wanted to check it out when it first came out, and never got into it because of the stories in the years following that you would read up on. And even to this day, you still read about people that play the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I got my chance to play it. A friend bought me the battle chest, and um, that was right before all the expansions went on sale. So the total of the expansions and the battle chest was equal to the battle chest previously.
Mm-hmm.
But I talked to customer service, got all the expansions, and I played it.
Mm-hmm.
I had fun with it only because I was playing it with a friend.
Right.
That's the only thing. I couldn't get into the art style. That turned me off.
Mm-hmm.
I knew going in that there's a gear grind. I mean, there's tiers of gear. That turned me off because I was done with raiding. I didn't want to
Oh yeah.
raid for years if I could help it. Though now I miss it. Yeah, it's art. The way a game looks turns me off more
Oh,
often
yeah.
than not. Like, you can be the best game ever to play.
Mm-hmm.
Combat can be the tightest, smoothest, most fluid thing ever. I mean, this could be God's gift gaming. But if you look like butt, I'm not gonna play you.
I think that's a good kind of point of like Minecraft, how it really just looks terrible, but
I can't play it.
it's total
Not
freedom.
anymore. Yeah. I mean, at first I was like, I like this.
Mm-hmm.
I like where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got tired of always looking at blocks.
Yeah.
And it's not just looking at blocks, but the textures.
Yeah.
It's pixel art.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can only take so much.
Oh, totally. But this
Another thing
article-
that would turn you off.
What's that?
What's another thing that would turn you off?
I mean, for me, graphics are a gigantic deal. I'm an artist. I went to art school. I have a BFA in graphic design. I am entitled to be distasted with art, and but you know, it all has its place, and if you like it, that's fine. However, I don't like old movies, old games, not really old comics. I appreciate what they did and what they have, where they've taken modern time, but when it comes to like old movies, if it's black and white, I don't care. I don't want to see something in black and white. The world is nowhere near black and white. It's not how things work. I don't care. Don't want to deal with that. Now, you have things like 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's old. It's very slow, but it's amazing. And you can be like, Star Wars came from that. Star Troopers came from that. Star Trek came from that. Anything involving space, AI, Portal, all came from this, like hands down. And it's really cool to see that, and I appreciate it, and it's very artfully done. And then you have, like, when someone, you know, if someone, like, you know, Eddie, for example, hasn't played Morrowind, and if he said, I can't play Morrowind because it looks so freaking dated, I'd be like, dude, I get you. I understand it. It looks bad, real bad. And even though now there's those texture upgrades that basically make it run in the Skyrim engine, which is cool, that's different. I could do that. And I also can't play, you know, old Halo games. The graphics are bad. The control scheme feels insanely clunky. All the physics feel off. You know, it's the sort of the conveniences like you're used to in modern gaming. If they're not there in the old games, I can't play old games. And if they're not in new games, like if someone's trying to make basically like a Halo clone and it feels clunky, get out of here. Like, you're done to me. Like, you're just dead. If you don't feel smooth, what are you doing trying to compete with someone who has the same product that is smooth? So for me,
Yeah.
it's an amalgamation of all the things. Visuals are the first thing, and then I can watch a video or see it played, glean how it's going to play a little bit, and then, you know, actual, like, you know, you see ArcheAge, you can build a house. I'm like, sold, let's do this, you know. The graphics are good. It's like, you can build a house, the graphics are good, it looks like it plays well. You had me at the houses.
You had me at hello.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And then another thing is with the whole aesthetics, Right now, there really is no excuse except for maybe time and money, maybe a limiting factor,
Mm-hmm.
to produce a game that doesn't look really good.
Mm-hmm.
There's CryEngine 3, there's the Unreal Engine, there's a Unity engine, which does not look half bad. I mean, take a look at City of It's an in-browser MMO,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks better than WoW. Not as good as any game that you would just launch and play, but I mean, during the engine, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you're running it in freaking browser,
Yeah, I mean, Unreal 3 can run in Chrome.
right? You can run Unreal Tournament 2005, was it? On an iPhone, way back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, these these excuses are like
Mm-hmm.
out the window. I mean, these engines can do this stuff.
Yeah.
You can make a good-looking game cheap.
And see, like, for example, the photo on screen of what looks, I'm thinking EverQuest 2.
It looked like Vanguard to me.
Oh, I don't know what that is. But either way, it doesn't look unlike EverQuest 2 or the updated EverQuest 1s, things of those natures. But the thing that's really keeping this from looking modern at all is the lighting engine. There basically isn't one. There's
Right.
their single source lit, cast shadow. If you put in any sort of modern day lighting engine, they would look convincingly new and decent. But
It would almost be a different game. Lighting has such a huge impact.
yeah, because this just looks like a high poly count, decent textured older game, which is, I'm assuming it kind of is, but I don't know what that is exactly.
This guy.
And I mean, see, the fact that we're talking about this and I don't even know what it is, and let alone it could have come out yesterday, but I'm looking at the lighting engine, I'm like, ugh, like it just can't connect to this because it looks older to me.
Yeah. This is like looking at this, and if it came out like yesterday or it's just released,
Mm-hmm.
I would try it. I would try it, see it how it plays, but at the same time, always having the back of my mind,
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't look as good as that other game I was playing.
Oh yeah. I mean, you have PlanetSide where there's hundreds of people on screen. I wish there was hundreds more on screen because I have no lag in the game, so I'd like to either get to the point where I'm lagging and not be teased in between, you know?
Right.
So give me hundreds of more players because it's running pretty good so far.
Extend the options.
Yep.
Yep.
But, you know, until we have Google Fiber, I can kind of understand them not wanting to shoot us all that data. But
When that day comes, the
Dang it.
amount of porn.
all the prawns. But this is, I think, a really good leaping off point for conversations and to kind of introspectively even get you in the right mindset to choose what games you want to play, because it's in my head. Like, I want houses, graphics, gameplay, and then also intertwined with all of that in every single one, innovation.
Number
I-
one thing,
I didn't want to
innovation.
play World of Warcraft because out of the gate, it was feeling like a ripoff of EverQuest. You know, if you look at it now, they didn't have really anything in common, but EverQuest was the fantasy MMO. That was them. Anarchy was the sci-fi MMO. Ultima was the medieval one. And then you had things like Dark Age of Camelot, which took Ultima into these sort of, or, you know, Ultima and EverQuest into a different gameplay mechanic, basically. It was still an MMO, but it was totally different. And, you know, did I say Dark Age of Camelot? Dark Age, for whatever I said. But it's the innovation that matters. You know, like when WoW came out, I see nothing new. I just see a very polished kind of EverQuest. And for me, it's just what it was. It was just a very polished. Like, I still think it's a very polished game for what it is, but I still don't think anything in it at all feels like something I haven't done before. So, like, why would I want to do that? You know, I'm not the kind of guy who can buy a Madden game every year or 8 Street Fighter games a year because they do that. You know, I love Age of Empires. I'll buy maybe one of each of the versions, like 3, 4, 5. I'm not going to buy 3 Empires, 3 Tactics, 3 Generals. You know, I'm not going to do that because there's nothing new. There's just like slight changes and sometimes even take away features. So, like in PlanetSide, it is very much PlanetSide 1, but extremely well done and actually done right in terms of modern standards of internet connectivity and graphical engines and stuff. You know, it all feels proper. Like, it feels like you're playing Battlefield 3 with like 100 people. And I think that's awesome. And then you have, for me, like WoW, where I feel like they did nothing new. They just streamlined the crap out of the system, which is a good thing if you've never played an MMO, which is why they have so many people who had never played any other game or MMO other than WoW.
Mm-hmm. Said it once, I'll say it again. Genocide 2 is a gold standard in MMOs.
Yep. We'll talk about that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So, CES, this is something you are very excited for.
Me and hopefully everyone everywhere.
Everywhere.
CES is a huge deal. It is literally it's like the E3 of hardware. So, consumer electronic show or whatever, society, station, Saskatchewan. But it starts, what is it, in 5 days? On the 10th? So it starts on the 10th, goes
Four.
to the 13th. They've already, started setting up for it. It's already like kind of in production. Some things have already been revealed. It's mainly going to be like 4,000 new cell phones, 1,000 new cameras, 100 new computers and tablets.
A million
And-
iPhones.
iPhonesies, and a bunch of stuff like that. And I think it was at CES where they used to have games, and they removed them, and the E3 kind of came out of that, if I'm not mistaken. Like in
Which,
the olden days. 'Cause
by
it
the
would
way,
be like,
E3 is garbage now.
what's that?
E3 is garbage now.
Oh, Lord, yeah. But at any rate, so CES is starting, and it's going to be just jamming pack your internet sites with gadgets and electronics. And although you might go like, I don't really care about cell phones, I have one. I mean, we're talking potentially like Xbox news, PlayStation news, Nvidia news, because it's all hardware. So although Nvidia and people would definitely have presence at like an E3, they're kind of more likely to be presenting major innovations in technology at CES because it's more the proper situation because it is hardware. Now, would they announce a new console at CES? Most likely not. Possible? Highly possible. Not very probable. So I would stay tuned to Engadget is my vote. The way them, Joystiq, massively, all the same AOL company. To me, Engadget really says this is actually important. Here you go. And you're then given some actual useful information, not just... They don't list every single freaking thing that has been announced. It's stuff that people probably actually care about, not like, oh, there's a new Pulsar Oral-B toothbrush coming out. Like, it's electronic. Whoa, If it
Amazing.
synced with your iPhone and told you didn't brush your teeth today, cool, sign me up. But for the most part, it's just actual, if you go to Engadget, relevant information pertaining to the show. And I really think you should keep up with it at least for the 3 days of the show, because you'll have an idea of what the heck has been invented lately and what you can expect to see on shelves, if not actually something that's out, on the 10th. It could be like, when they announced the new Xbox, it's out now, go buy it. And everyone's like, whoa, what? And so like I called and I ordered me one, and I got it within like 3 days. So it could be something on shelves on the 10th for all you know, and you might not know about it until it's too late and they're sold out and you got to wait another week. So just watch it. Watch the headlines. They also have podcasts and panels and show information. Maybe, I hate to even mention G4, maybe G4 will be covering it, or something like that.
Boy. I think they'll have some news in passing. I don't think they'll have someone there.
Right.
Who knows? I mean, I could be wrong. They could be talking about it right now. We're going to have coverage. Live coverage.
But to sort of delve deeper into possible things mentioned at CES, we have the Oculus Rift, which is the thing that basically makes a Virtual Boy not funny anymore.
You mean a virtual boy?
Virtual Boy. But the Oculus Rift is a super awesome invention that has been passed out to devs as of late. And it's, as you see in this picture here, it is a 3D headset you put on, and this is the internal viewing of it. These are all prototypes. They can all be completely changed, but this is currently what it looks like. And every single game developer, news article, columnist I've seen has said it is amazing. It is 3D gaming. It is mind-boggling. It is just anything you can imagine and have heard. It is true. I haven't personally read anything negative about it. I'm super excited. Imagine me not having to be at a desk to do anything. Because if you think about it, you have to have a monitor basically stationary, either mounted to a wall or on a desk. So therefore, you might as well have a table there. You might as well have a keyboard. You might as well have a mouse. Imagine you take the monitor out of the equation. You can pretty much just be on the couch with 3D goggles on, keyboard in your lap, mouse pad on the couch. You're pretty much set up, computer beside the couch. The whole
How fantastic
desk,
would that be?
yeah, I mean, the desk environment is pretty much obsolete at the point of this thing becoming released.
Oh yeah, I would be in bed doing everything. I'm not even kidding.
I mean, I have a bad back, so I don't want to be sitting in a chair all day long.
Of course,
like
same deal.
Mm-hmm. So, the Oculus Rift is, and I believe it's insanely affordable from what it's going to be like $200 or something, which that's a good monitor, and you're getting rid of a good monitor. A 3D monitor is like $600 with glasses and an appropriate video card could make it up to $700 to $1,000 to $3,000 to get a really good 3D setup. You're talking maybe $200. Now, I don't know exactly the 3DS technology, but if I'm not mistaken, on the box or when it starts, it said people under the age of 8 shouldn't use the 3DS, which means it is potentially damaging to your vision, especially if you're under the age of 8. Now, for me, I go, it can hurt 8-year-olds' eyes? Well, that can hurt my eyes then, is the way I look at it. However, they're saying or whatever, it's only if you're under 8. I'm like, okay. So that's something. So any 3D technology for prolonged periods worries me because, like when I left Avatar in IMAX, I felt like the world was gray and depressing. And I understand now, or I understood after watching Avatar in IMAX, why there was this massive waves of people committing suicide afterwards because they felt like planet Earth could not keep up with the reality of Avatar to them.
That is amazing.
It was mind-boggling. So living in this 3D world, like living in PlanetSide with all those particle effects and stuff, it might be psychologically damaging. It could damage your vision. There's no telling. But I want to use it.
That is interesting. Heck yeah. Sign me up.
Yep.
Sign me up. I mean, right now, if you look at it, the only limit to the thing is the screen.
Mm-hmm.
The screen needs to be really fast.
Yeah.
Is all I'm thinking. It needs to be able to update the image really freaking fast.
Yeah.
I think it can be pulled off. We got some really fast screens out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking, I mean, my standard is 2 milliseconds. It's what I always use for gaming monitors because if you're going to play any sort of shooting game, you kind of need 2 milliseconds to be on par with people.
Yes.
And with these screens being so small, I don't see why they can't be ridiculously fast, ridiculously high resolution, because they say when playing it, it feels like you're playing on like a 120-inch TV. It feels like you're in IMAX, just like.
Yep, it's right in front of your eyes.
And a second version of this could either be more polished, faster refresh rate, or it could be so
smaller,
far as to have
lightweight.
Eventually it's going to be just like wearing a pair of glasses, but
oh yeah, it's going to be contact lenses.
A soon after version of this having what do you call it when you shake your iPhone and it knows it? Accelerometers. You can have accelerometers in it, so when you turn your head, it might even have accelerometers in it. I don't even know, but it could sense you looking and actually turn your character's head. If you're flying a plane, you can look out the window and see and not actually be changing where you're steering. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So that's a huge deal. And if you look at the thing right below here, Oculus Rift will cater to those who wear glasses, aka nerds.
Wow.
So sign me up.
Yeah.
Because I hate wearing contacts. I'm over it. You can't go to bed when you want. You got to go to the bathroom and take them out and do all that song and dance. When you wake up, you can't just throw glasses on and go get breakfast. You got to go to the bathroom, wash your hands, put your contacts in. Super annoying.
Yep. Terribly inconvenient.
And this right here was the original prototype. It is a piece of cardboard wrapped in electrical gaffer's tape with a USB plugged into the top, or an HDMI. So,
Wonderful.
I mean, this was August 16th to, yeah, so from these dates, it says within the same day they were given that thing, and then they were handed a photo of what the sculptor or whatever had made out of plastic, And I've seen that thing held, so it looks like this now. So the thing's small. Like, it's crazy small. It really is.
Okay, this excites me. Hawken, a mech free-to-play game, fast-paced Twitch shooter style game. It's nothing like your Mech Warrior. These are not lumbering giant behemoths that take forever to position and fire. We'll support the Oculus when it launches.
And by support, it really means, like, made for it.
Yeah.
Unlike, because the Oculus Rift will work with anything. Because, I mean, like, every game works in a 3D engine. You're watching every game in 3D except for cinematics. Because they're not. They're just 2D videos. But, like, the game itself will always be in 3D if you have a 3D monitor. But, a game like Hawken is saying it'll utilize and have special settings and configurations for the Oculus Rift. So,
Gonna fire off another one.
amazing.
Doom 4 will be compatible with it. Minecraft. This is good. This is exciting. I like this tech. I am gonna definitely keep watching it.
I mean, I'm sort of pessimistic and germophobic and whatnot. My biggest concern, my only concern with this, is me losing my vision while using it. That's about it.
That would suck. Yeah.
And or being mugged while wearing it.
No, I'm gonna mug you. You're gonna be wearing it, watching everything through it. I'm gonna walk through your front door, rob you blind.
I will say, like, I can't really use a 3D monitor because if I'm streaming or recording, it doesn't translate. You can upload 3D to YouTube now. Don't get me wrong. However, how many of y'all have 3D monitors? Like, close to none.
I'm not gonna touch 3D until there's another big advance in it.
Oh yeah. For one thing, in terms of TVs, no one can actually settle on passive or active 3D technology. So, no thanks. Just give me this.
Yep.
Because, I mean, if in terms of passive technology, yes, it's a better idea to have a 70-inch 3D TV with everyone wearing just sunglasses. But if it's active technology, I'd rather have an Oculus Rift all day long. So, this is, to me, this is the only viable solution to 3D gaming, virtual reality that's ever really come out. Hands
gonna be good, folks.
And for more hardware and a continuation of people's back problems, in my opinion, and ergonomics, the Razer's released the Orb Weaver, $130. To me, a fair price for relatively any peripheral. I use Logitech G13. It's essentially the exact same thing. Mine has a screen on it. It can tell me my CPU. It can tell me the ammo in my gun, whatever I want it to tell me. This is just another example of the left-handed mini keyboards. So it's mechanical as well. A lot of people love that. If you're recording, I don't recommend it because they are loud. But I just am glad people are straying from full-size keyboards more and more. I think I don't think the Xbox controller, PlayStation controller standard are the solution to gaming that a lot of people think they are.
Not at all.
I mean, a lot of people think so. They work amazingly for things like Saints Row, where you have to drive constantly. It works way better to have a throttleable control system. So
An analog system, basically.
Yeah. So you can joystick around and steer and accelerate in increments. And then you have something like this, which, if you are doing any kind of PC gaming, is phenomenal. The buttons are laid out exactly the way you want. And unlike mine, if you look, the WSAD is centered. Mine is actually at the top. So I don't have a number key at the top. So like if you want to press, 1 for your assault rifle, 2 for your pistol, I actually don't have that option. I just have my top row is basically Q, W, E, R, T, and Y or whatever, QWERTY. And that's fine, but then all of my buttons are super below my WSAD. So it's, imagine having your keyboard right now, and below the Control, Windows key, Alt, Spacebar, you have another row of keys, and that's what I'm dealing with. It's okay. It feels really comfortable, but you're left out of how every game is default programmed to access your guns. So
Yep.
it's kind of a shame. So this is actually seemingly a really good solution, potentially very loud. So keep that in mind. Watch videos, play with one in Best Buy or something. Try and figure that out beforehand. But if you have back pain from gaming or whatever, or wrist pain, these have all but eliminated that for me. So it's something to really keep in mind. It's just, I feel like it's a PSA more than anything.
Yeah. It's really heck. I mean, like you said, ergonomics, the whole relieving of pain and rest, it's good stuff. I wish I had one. Fortunately, can't afford it.
Okay, so this is just me recapping on the Chromebook story I did. I think it's super important to always change the field of gaming technology in general. And so this is just an article about a guy who is over at Massively writing an article about him taking basically a small time frame, like a month or a couple months, to use the Chromebook and see like how it performs with games, various different kinds of games, not really, AAA big box titles, but more or less social gaming / like iPad type games on the Chromebook, which is kind of what it's meant to be used for, since it runs off Chrome, and in Chrome you have all those Chrome apps. So you have games like Air Mech and things like that, which are basically mobile games with maybe a little more graphic power to them, possibly. But for $250, it's a netbook that actually works. So if you want a netbook and you think they are really crappy, you're right, and this is your solution. Or if you want a MacBook Air, but you may not want necessarily a Mac, or it's too expensive, I think this is also your solution. If you really want an iPad because you love the touch experience and just how that works, this isn't for you. But if you love what an iPad can do in terms of software application and just the day-to-day actual gain from it, I think this is also a decent solution. Minus touch. There's no touch. So keep that in mind. And the hard
I
drive,
imagine there would be a touch one eventually.
one day it'll be like a convertible.
Yep.
But it also has a 16 gigabyte hard drive. It's flash drive. So you're not going to be storing like a million songs. The idea is you have like either a Google Drive on the internet, you pay like $10 a month, whatever, and you have like 500 gigs or something of songs on there on the web that you're just accessing, or Pandora, or things like that. Or you have just a nice router, and in that router usually there'll be a USB slot, and you plug in an external hard drive, let's say 2 terabytes for $130, and you have a media center, and you can then have all your music, all your pictures on that media center instantaneously through the Wi-Fi network accessed on the Chromebook. That's how computers are going to be. You're going to have, all your OS and programs and things will be local, and all your photos and music and stuff are going to be pretty much exclusively not in your computer, because you're going to want to be able to access them. Like if you're on your back porch, you can take a little boombox out there, Wi-Fi it up, control it with your iPhone, play any song you have networked on your computer. Awesome. So that's the future of things indefinitely. That's just going to be what's happening. So this is going to be a good push towards things like that. And at the price point, I mean, anybody with a job can jump in on this.
Yep, it's a really good machine. Looking at the specs, looking at what it can do, knowing what to expect, it is a good machine all around.
Now, if you, basically this is as good, if not way better, than your standard kind of like Dell $500 laptop that you would go get. Given it isn't going to run programs, you have to use the Chrome apps, but there's like hundreds of thousands of them. They're all really good, and a lot of them are iPhone games and things that you pay for that are free, and or on the iPhone you would pay for them, and on Chrome are usually free. It's kind of cool because they just show ads on them and stuff. Now, it doesn't have a hard drive. It has 16 gigabytes of flash memory, so you can install your apps. A lot of the apps you just stream. So if you don't have internet access, this thing is basically just a typewriter. Now, if you
Yeah.
have internet access, which you usually do everywhere, really, then you're good to go. It's a very high-functioning machine, but it's not like a desktop computer. Just keep that in mind. Do your research, but it's awesome. A lot of Best Buys have them on display, and a lot of Best Buys have bad internet, so also don't let that hinder your experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a really interesting little bit of news, and it kind of is tying in well with CES coming up soon. Microsoft buys R2 Studios. I never heard of R2 Studios. However, it is a company that specializes in the integration of varying home electronics. So if you've ever seen, like on cribs, people who have like an iPad that controls their security system, their hot tub, their pool, it tells them when they're out of milk in the refrigerator because they scan it with a barcode whenever they take a sip of milk. All these kind of things. This is the kind of company that would basically be providing these massive electronic services. And because if you look at like the Kinect, the prototype of the Kinect when they first built it costs, I think, $60,000 or more to make one Kinect. And then when they went into production, they were able to streamline it into $120 when it first came out. That's how computers work now, and electronics and circuit boards. It's all about mass production means like 8,000% price cuts. So whenever you buy one of these sort of like home electronic computer systems, like the tablet you get is like $4,000, but it's like half as good as an iPad that costs $500. It's all these kind of things because they are tailoring to like super rich people who can actually afford their specialized skills. But with Microsoft owning them, we're talking things that could cost maybe $40,000 to have your house all computered up, maybe costing $2,000, $1,000, $500, you know. And then adding this to the Xbox Live, these are services that could intertwine infinitely into making your house just super cool. Because, I mean, like I said, I have an iPhone controlled thermostat. I can lay in bed and control how my house is heated and cooled. I can also be out of town and, you know, I can turn my heater off when I go out of town. And an hour before I get home, I can turn it back on and the house is warm by the time I get home. And it wasn't wasting the heating bill the entire time I was gone. Like, you know, for a week or whatever. You probably wouldn't do it. Like, I mean, you could, like, go to the office, turn it off, and then before you get home, turn it back on. But you're probably actually spending more money with that revving it back up. Either way, this kind of stuff really interests me because it's sort of like taking the brick and mortar house into being like a smart house space station.
Do you remember that Smart House Disney movie?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Want GLaDOS.
Exactly.
GLaDOS will run my home.
I wish I had vacuum carpets like they did.
Freaking amazing.
Suck up like a whole
The
plates of
physics
food.
alone that house can defy.
Yep.
All right. So what's next? You recently found this.
Yep, this is something I found today. In terms of the whole integration system of electronics and versatility, you know, for me, you know, you'd have like a N64 and a PlayStation, and you basically wanted 4 controllers for each one. You got to go buy, you know, 8 controllers. It was really annoying. So this is Mad Cat's Game Smart new system, and it's basically going to be, they're going to design a controller. It's going to most likely resemble an Xbox controller that's popular nowadays, and it's going to have Bluetooth, so it's just going to be able to sync with anything. It's smart. I don't know why that really hasn't been too successfully done yet. It's been done, but not really successfully and on a large scale. So basically, your iPhone, your MacBook, like anything will be able to be controlled with one of these controllers. just because of a Bluetooth connection. And basically everything uses Bluetooth connection. It just makes sense. It's all about integrating things and not having to have 40,000 controllers.
I wonder how many companies don't want them to make this because they want their stuff exclusive.
For sure.
Like I imagine Apple is like, I don't like you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like you. I don't like what you're doing. I don't like your face. So you need a cease and desist, or I'm going to do absolutely nothing to you.
Because either they're going to have the controller have flash memory to where you set it up on something else and you can plug it into your Mac and it would then just recognize the flash memory will you press A and it presses A as if it's on the keyboard, things like that. Basically like a Joystiq emulator. Or if it is actually able to be supported, on the Mac, you would have a little app utility you would download and it would be like the same kind of thing as Joystiq, but it would default for you.
Yep.
So
it's interesting, sure.
Yeah, it's unifying things. Like, I had to get a freaking wired Xbox controller to use on my computer because my wireless ones have the charging cables, but there's no data through connection on the charging cables. So I had to buy a wired controller even though I have 4 wireless ones. It was really annoying. And
yeah, this is a level of convenience I like.
Yeah, it's just taking what's available and making it freaking, like, obviously a smart move, There's so many things where it's like, why hasn't anyone done that? Or you think of something, like when iPhones first came out, I was like, how come an iPhone, it basically has GPS? Or there's GPSs you can buy for like $150. And then when you go get a new car, adding GPS costs like $3,000. I'm like, this thing is awful electronic and it costs $3,000. And the good versions cost like $100. You're crazy. Or the computer in your car is like a Windows 95 supercomputer, and then realistically I just want to plug my iPhone to the dashboard and have it run my car for me because it's a way better electronic. But these are
would you say this is so smart it's games smart?
Games smart.
Yeah.
I just think
I did that. I went there.
It's just, I personally have disdained Mad Cat since their incarnation because they always made really crummy, cheap controllers.
Pretty shoddy stuff, yeah.
They've gotten better since, I would say, the 360 era, but it's still debatable. But this is at least something. I mean, they have the resources to pull this off. They're a huge company because they sell affordable controllers. But this is the sort of stuff that'll be linking devices together more so than they already are. And if you look at Windows 8 and iOS and everything, and the new MacBook OSs, it all really connects together. And this is just one more example of how we're actually going to bridge the gaps between these devices that should be connecting that don't connect. Like, you have phones that can connect to TVs, like a Samsung phone, Samsung TV, and you can just flick your media onto it like you would with the AirPlay on Mac stuff. So hopefully we see more of this stuff coming up, and maybe even at CES we'll see this or similar things popping up.
I imagine it'll be a little slow, just because companies they don't want to work together.
No,
they don't like their competition. But hopefully, it'll develop. All right, so we got the Wii U was recently launched, and you wouldn't suspect too many used units out there and whatnot, which is obvious thing. But anyone that does in fact buy a used Wii U or get their hands on it somehow, can kind of get free games. So what's going on is people getting rid of their Wii U's will delete their account, delete all personal information and whatnot, and so that there's no personal information tied to the system anymore. But the person that buys, or I guess attains, I guess you don't necessarily have to buy it. I mean, you can get it through other means. But you'll have your own account. There will be no trace of any previous owner account. But if you go to download a game that the previous owner had bought, you might be able to re-download it and pay nothing. Which is
crazy.
A gross oversight. I don't know how they didn't catch this
Because if you look at like Xbox Live or Steam, for example, Steam to me is the best way to explain it. You buy a game on Steam, it downloads it locally. You cannot play that thing unless you are logged in to the appropriate account. Just like iTunes, music, it's all right protected to your login. This seems to be like you can only purchase it through the login, but then as long as that data is on the local, it doesn't matter if you're logged into the appropriate account to access it, which I don't understand at all. Like, that is a gross oversight, and seemingly the way they just organized the entire logistics of the way these transactions occur, they just did it wrong. It doesn't seem like a screw up. It seems like there's some actual hierarchy that the thought process they went through in making this stuff checks and balance is just grossly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because being able to play the content without an ID I don't understand how it's even possible. Like, unless there's just some weird bug that genuinely is crossing paths and causing it.
I wonder if it's every system behave like this, or if it's only a few.
Right. Now, this is to not to mention, on Christmas Eve, there was a 5 gigabyte patch for the Wii U.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine the 30 million people who got these on Christmas Day, who had to spend countless hours on varying internet speed connections, downloading a patch from what we'll say is one location, possibly 5 locations. Wow, I can't even imagine. I would love to know if anyone had that patch and how long it took them to download it. Because Nintendo came out on like Christmas Eve and were like, you should probably unwrap all your Wii U's, patch them, then give them to the people who you're about to betray their trust. Cause,
I like that they at least told you about it.
Yeah. But all of the online features, basically any of the purported features of the Wii U weren't on the console. You had to get that 5 gig patch. That's what I read. Can't verify it, but that's what I read. That basically all of the Wii U features didn't exist. They rushed it that early. The tech was there, but it wasn't finished, and they had to patch it onto it. Mind boggled.
Oh, yeah. How do you release a console that's not finished?
Mm-hmm.
Some companies, man. All right. This is something you spoke pretty passionately about earlier in the week. Game store owners should be more inclusive. I would expand that statement and say all store owners should be more inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Especially when it's like a mom and pop type deal.
Oh yeah. It's such bad business practice to turn off your customers. So get into that.
So for me, it comes down to more so cigar stores and comic book stores, because the level, because with a GameStop, you don't have very many mom and pop type game stores anymore. So I experience this more in cigar and comic stores because it's like a niche little industry, specialty, high knowledge involved. There's a finesse involved. With comic books, it's about art and knowing the artist's story and all these things. And then cigars, it's all about the care of the cigars, the techniques, how they were made, all various factors. And then there's also age requirements for various things. And it's really weird because I always get, in cigar stores, I get shafted on my age, even though I'm 25 now. Stop carding me. I have a beard and a wedding ring. Let me be. Card me if you have to, but don't treat me like I'm a peon, because I quite possibly know more about cigars than you do. Now, to take this all back to games, you still get this in GameStops. It's, that's more my experience. I live in a metro Atlanta, so there's not many mom and pop stores because GameStop wants to hit these huge populations really hard. And we have a GameStop that was like not even a block down from an EB Games. GameStop bought EB Games. They just turned the EB Games into a GameStop. They didn't take one down. They're literally not even half a mile away from each other on the same strip of road. Not even, there's one traffic light in between them. And then there's a mall where I went to college. The same thing. Literally, like you're seeing here, a store maybe 5 windows down around the corner, there was another GameStop. They were competing. They bought each other out. Didn't take one down. Still exist. I don't understand that. It's crazy. So the mom and pop shops aren't really around here, but the ones I've been to, either the owner knows nothing about video games, which is rare, or they're extremely pretentious, snooty, and non-inclusive. They're exclusive. They seemingly don't want you to be there. They don't want your money. They want to make fun of you and then kick you out and then go bankrupt. I don't understand the idea of wanting to run a business as a club, an exclusive club. It seems ridiculous, especially when you're catering to a younger demographic who isn't going to be joining the Freemasons and paying large dues. They want to, once a month, once a week, drop, $20 to $60. You need every dime from them imaginable to stay afloat. And my experience has always been negative in all of these situations, which is why I get my cigars online, I get my games online, because I don't pay the inflated price, especially like in the mom and pop stores. It's like $65 for a game. I'm like, you're crazy. And in comic stores, I'm usually just in and out. I don't care. Just give it to me. Bye. How about you?
Oh yeah, I do everything online. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't like dealing with the people that own these shops, especially when you're talking about mom and pop shop. These guys, do you not want my money?
Mhm.
Is that what I'm getting? Just it makes no sense. Again, business 101. You know the customer is always right until they attack you.
Mhm. Because I feel like in terms of the mom and pop stores, it almost seems like the only ones who are ever nice are the ones who opened a game store or a comic store knowing that in the 90s comics sold really well. So they like eventually got the gall to open one knowing nothing of comics at all. They have no insight, no knowledge. Possibly they enjoy some comics. If you enjoy something, I don't say necessarily you should just start a business around it. That doesn't seem exactly smart. Now, can it work out? Sure. But if you're not some form of an expert or a connoisseur of said industry, I don't think you should open a business in it. So
Yeah,
the
there's
really,
definitely a certain level of education you
yeah,
need.
you know, could me or you run a game store? Absolutely. Could I give insight onto a Madden game? No. Would I at least know enough about each one that comes out when it's new to tell someone, hey, that one has, Michael Vick in it, but he's in jail. So it's kind of like cool. It's a new feature. And, so you'd have an idea. And if someone was like, hey, so like, should I buy this Call of Duty 1? And I'd be like, are you familiar with the new ones? Do you like those? And they're like, yeah, but you probably won't like that one then. It's World War II. They'd be like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I'd be like, yeah, you missed something there. You could have some insight. But the
Yep.
only experience I've had with nice mom and pop, niche stores like this, they have no clue what's going on. They charge about $65 for a new game, which is hilarious to me. Like you're gone. And
When they do that to a movie spin-off.
yeah. And so I don't get how, for one, I don't understand how the people who are really nice and uninformed have a store. They usually don't last long. And then the ones who open a store and are just extreme jerks, it blows my mind. And it saddens me as a human being and then it confuses me as a consumer. Because, most of the time I know what I'm going to go get and I know a lot about it. And you'll be like, hey, so like I just want to grab like a copy of Age of Empires 3. And they'll be like, oh, really? You want to play Age of Empires 3? Really, man? Like, I mean, have you not seen like Katamari Damacy? That's where you should be, spending your money. And you're like, yeah, I actually own that game, and those aren't related at all. Like, what are you talking about? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's something that I think is one of the main reasons the mom and pop stores have gone under.
Dude, brick and mortar period
Oh,
going
absolutely.
down.
And it's also, why buy an apple at mom and pop grocery when I can go to Walmart and get 50 for the same price?
Yep.
You know, especially if mom and pop is all organic and they're in like a hip part of town, they're gonna do great business. But if
Oh
you
yeah.
can't tell me that thing doesn't have pesticide on it, you're done, man. Like you're out of business.
Gotta know your product. Gotta know it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Here we go. Over at Arabic Gamers.
Ooh. An exotic.
So
So Sony, what is Sony doing? They want a they want to get a patent to block used games.
mm-hmm.
What they're doing with this patent. All right. So the idea is that you're gonna have RFID tagged video games and consoles that will match up data, saying that this game was first launched on this console. It is now locked to this console ID. What this does is if you want to sell your game, you sell it, you take it to GameStop, trade it in, do whatever you do with the whole icky GameStop, and then somebody buys that game. They take it to their system. The RFID tag does not match your system. You are locked out from that game. You cannot play that game. Now, implementation of this would be out in 2015, I think they stated. So you will most likely not find it on the PS4 on launch.
Mm-hmm.
But the impact that this patent could have is, for one, used game sales will go down. Stop will take a hit in profit.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about billions here.
Oh yeah.
Billions. And it's almost like practically 100% profit for GameStop and like Game in the UK, for these shops that sell used games and take all their money. All their revenue is coming from these used games being sold and traded. So they're going to take a hit, which is another nail in the coffin for brick and mortar game shops. And then when this was talked about, when the patent was talked about, shareholders got scared. GameStop stock dropped 7% in peak trading hours. So this is scaring people, and I'm happy.
Oh yeah.
Because it's scaring the
They
people that
jumped
should be
ship
scared.
real quick.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, the turnaround is that GameStop had some pretty words to say to these guys, and they're back on board.
Yeah,
But
climb back up. But I mean, that shows how much their investors have faith in the GameStop stratosphere. It's just they've been wary. They know how things are going. Even though GameStop is in the digital distribution market now, which get out of here with that.
Yep.
I mean, if you're not Steam or EA or Amazon, who has been doing what they, digital distribution of books and things for a while, GameStop digital distribution, I will be blown away if that works out for them in any capacity, let alone saves them in the end. So, like I talked about in the other episode, I think GameStop is near piracy and evil. It's, for one thing, it's an antiquated service. I want all of my games digitally. I don't want any hard copies, really. And I sure as heck don't want some snob-nosed jerk who's trying to take my money. So the fact that the Sony patent, for me, really is just saying, screw you, GameStop, I love. And I also am the kind of guy, I don't like lending my games to people, and I don't like used games. So having my games like RFID tagged, I'm like, okay, like that doesn't affect me at all.
Not one bit.
None. Now, there is the point of, what if I wanted to sell my game to my buddy? He wants to give me a 6-pack of beer and I give him my old Call of Duty. You wouldn't be able to do that. And people brought up the point, well, what if you could, like, you know, re-register it to somebody else, like actually trade it to them like a pink slip for a car or something? That defeats the entire purpose, because you would then be able to just like pink slip it over to GameStop and then give it to the next person. It doesn't really work, so it would be an all or nothing kind of deal, really.
I feel like it would help GameStop have another feature to sell you.
Exactly. Oh well, to re-register it's gonna be like $45. They
Yeah.
would do that. So I hope. I don't understand why consoles don't have CD keys like PC games have had since like 1995. Why don't they have that? I don't understand. I don't get why there is a resale on console gaming. It's such a money-grubbing system. You would think they would have jumped on that boat really long time ago. You know, people also say, like, I like being able to take my game to my friend's house and, you know, sitting down and playing. Well, that's will be gone with this. Yes and no, because if you think about it, on Xbox, for example, you can recover your gamer tag on a friend's Xbox in like a minute, and all the stuff you have on your Xbox Live account is just it's ready to go on that person's thing, thus allowing you to play your game. So that's not an issue at all. It's synced to your account, not your console. Because what if your console dies? You're screwed. You know, they wouldn't do that. It's logistically not in their benefit.
Yep.
Same thing with iTunes. You know, you can get a Blu-ray and sync it to your iTunes account, and then on my Apple TV, I can watch any of my Blu-rays live streaming. So, okay, that's awesome. Why even have a Blu-ray, really, at that point? You know, it's 1080p streaming. Okay, sure, if there's an internet outage, I can't watch them. But chances are, if my internet's out, I have bigger problems, like a tornado is ripping apart my house.
Yeah. Another flip side, another statement I saw in passing, not sure where, talking about how, what if Sony took this patent out, but doesn't intend to implement it and is actually keeping, say, Microsoft
Mm-hmm.
or Nintendo from getting it,
Very true.
so that it doesn't get introduced into the industry and this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Sony isn't the nice guy, the good guy Greg that would do that, but I mean, you know, one can hope.
Yeah, I feel like even with this patent, Microsoft can just be like, we're just gonna give people CD keys then, and the game won't work without it. Bah, we win. Because like a CD key would give you basically the exact same functionality, it's just not automatic. And I don't think you could in any way infringe that action. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of have Sony who would either be, you know, nice guy preventing the collapse of GameStop, which is, yeah, right. Sony is a publisher, a developer, they're everything. They're probably going to try and kill GameStop
Yeah.
because they're losing billions. You know, like I was saying, video games are $60 now. They went from like 30 to 40 to 60. They could go back down to 30 if GameStop was out of the picture. They'd be making a lot of money, more money. I would dare say, take away GameStop. Companies could sell $60 games for $30 and possibly be making more money than they are now.
No, that's not even a question. It's what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're getting these games, you're buying these games, you're giving money to the developer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're jumping through hoops to get there, but at least the developer is getting paid for you buying this game.
Yeah. Because two things are happening to give them more money. The price is lowered to 30, so therefore it's half as much as it was. So they're going to be inherently selling more copies, not to mention more copies of other games, because that $60 I now bought 2 games with it, and they're brand new no matter what. So I bought 2 games. They get $60 instead of possibly, and they get $60 for 2 titles, and then, you know, with it being cheaper, other people are going to buy the game who wouldn't have. So that's just more money. They'll have, the sales number will be way, way, way larger. So if you were to compare sales, you know, yes, okay, selling 500 copies at $60 makes you more than 700 at $30. But you wouldn't be selling 700. You'd be selling like triple the original sale number because so many more people could afford it / feel comfortable paying that, not waiting for it to go on sale or get a used one. They'd be paying upfront $30, sure, all day long. Like, that's a very solid price point for people to feel comfortable paying, especially from a decline from 60.
Yep. Accessibility just goes through the roof.
Mm-hmm. And how long is the Steam sale prolonged?
Tomorrow is the last day that there will be sales. So Tuesday there will be no holiday sales left.
So absolutely check all the featured stuff today, because today you can get, I still think you can get yesterday's stuff, today's stuff, but at 1 p.m. tomorrow Eastern, they will remove yesterday's stuff. Today's stuff will be yesterday's stuff, and then they'll have the new things. And then there's still, I believe, the huge catalog of independent titles you can still choose from. Like 500 games that are like 50% off, basically.
Yep.
So that's a really big deal.
All right.
So this... Yeah, I talked about this one. I think I covered this one pretty good. Do you care to chime in your 2 cents there?
What is this? What am I doing it on?
The burning? Connecticut.
The burning. Oh my god. So, a town in Connecticut has, in their infinite wisdom, decided to give out $25 vouchers to people who would trade in their violent video games. And they intend to burn them soon. Okay, so I want to real quick say, from a business standpoint, go to GameStop, get some $5 games, violent video games, come to Connecticut, and get your $25. No, I'm kidding. Don't do this. This is bad. This is akin to a book burning from way back in the day. And it's a step backward in society, and it tackles the wrong issue. Not even an issue. They're making a problem out of something that isn't a problem. So the idea was that the guys, whoever out there is a mayor, governor, whatever the hell it is that they went to, a bunch of citizens were clamoring for a solution. So they chalked it up to violent video games. You'll have seen, I think, many publications, newspapers, about the school shooting that 28 people had died, 20 of them were children, and parents are in uproar of trying to figure out what to do to keep that from happening again. I remember the son said that the shooter was obsessed, had an addiction to Call of Duty, and therefore acted on those urges that he had while playing the game. 100% false information. The guy was psychologically disturbed, and something set him off.
Autistic or something.
I think he was. And he was set off by his mom to the point that he decided he would take a weapon, go to her school, shoot it up. Connecticut seems fit to call violent video games the devil when they weren't the reason why he did what he did. Video games have never been the reason why many of these shootings happen.
There's no connection. I mean, they all wear fucking t-shirts, but you don't see people, they're wearing clothes. Clothes are the problem.
Clothes. The quote-unquote trench coat mafia from the Columbine shooting. I mean, it makes no sense. There are case studies that went into this, and there is no correlation between violent video games and violent behavior. Just because you play a violent video game does not mean you want to do what you're seeing. And if you look at games that are played, Call of Duty, you could say is an arcade shooter. It's very flashy. It's they throw points at you like it's a party. I mean, none of this is realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand. From a personal standpoint, I play violent video games all the time. PlanetSide 2, it's large scale warfare. Doesn't mean I want to start a war.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if I wanted to, it's not possible. But the point is, I don't want to because of playing the game.
Yeah, it's like
I play it because
you can vent it almost.
right. It's games are shoot, what word am I looking for here?
They're like an
An
outlet
escape.
for your.
An outlet.
Yeah.
There you go. An outlet. And it also there are games that allow me to experience things that I would otherwise never be able to experience in life. Just would not have the time to. Granted, warfare is not something that I want to do. I've always wanted to be a soldier, but can't get into that. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, like I recently playing a game that is a flying sim. I've always wanted to be some form of a pilot, and it allows me to experience said thing without doing it. But as far as games making me want to do something violent like this, not once. And then the whole burning.
Mm-hmm.
This, if you look back in history, okay, so you got book burnings back in the day. This is pre-World War II, like pre-World War I days. People would call certain media the devil, or that it causes something in the youth to make them delinquents. You got comic books when they first came out.
Mm-hmm.
They were the devil.
Yep.
Because it was a media that wasn't understood. It was something different. Movies also. You got movies, comic books, and then if you look back on it now, you would think they were uneducated, idiotic for believing that this is what leads to this. It makes no sense. Nothing. There is no correlation. There has never been any correlation between violent comic books, violent video games, violent movies with violent behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. It just astounds me that a town would be so irresponsible to do such a thing.
And the
One,
thing
there-
is, it's from my understanding, it's a nearby town to the shooting. So, for one thing, it's not even that town. And secondly, I mean, I want to emphasize, I am not saying there's anything justifiable about what the guy did. It's a terrible tragedy. We agree it's a tragedy.
Mhm.
However, how are you going to blame innocent parties? There's not, for one thing, not once has any of these shooters claimed, well, I just play a bunch of Gears of War and I just chainsaw people to pieces. Like, Gears of War did it. They don't claim that. And when they're even interviewed and asked, they go, no, I just was bullied a lot. And I got mad and I went on a shooting spree. That's what happened. It's not like, well, I had a bad ham sandwich. Ham sandwiches kill people. Like,
of course.
I went on a shooting spree because I had a bad sandwich. Like, none of they never attribute it to a thing influencing them. It's someone made them mad and they went after that person. Now, this guy, who I believe was said to be autistic, I don't know. And again, if you're autistic or whatever, I understand there's countless forms of autism, and I'm not saying autistic people are shooters. Nor am I saying to anyone who is not familiar with any sort of mental condition that you should think you hear someone's autistic and think they're going to shoot you. I know a lot of people with autism, and never have I thought that. So don't hold us to that either. However, I believe hearing this, and, when someone has some sort of mental illness, disability, condition, anything, that alone kind of throws out the validity of, even if they were to say, that video game told me to do that, they are not in a mental state of being to where you could say the 99% of the rest of the world who is quote unquote normal would be affected by this. That's like saying You can't have video games, you can't have movies, you can't have light bulbs because some people have photosensitive epileptic seizures. Okay, what? How about you just make those people live in a cave and I'll keep using light bulbs and lights in my iPhone because I'm not going to have a seizure. Sucks to be them. Sorry. That's not my fault. Like, I can't do anything about that. So, yeah, if you have someone who has a mental condition, don't let them play violent video games. I can make that connection for you. I also wouldn't let them watch Bambi because they might go crazy when they see that Bambi's mom dies.
I'm gonna go crazy.
This guy. You know, it's... I imagine they're very innocent and, you know, thoughtful mothers who walk in on their kids playing Mortal Kombat and Call of Duty. And since they were raised in most likely a culture where they were taught to play with dolls and things, that is very surreal to them to see violence, let alone their kids enacting it. However, growing up a boy and being given toy guns and real guns my entire life, and playing cowboys and Indians and robbers and cops or cops and robbers and what have you, and playing paintball and shooting birds and squirrels and things, playing Mortal Kombat when I was really young, watching violent movies and TV shows, and watching documentaries of people getting just like burned alive by napalm in Vietnam and stuff as a little kid. I'm not violent. I don't want to be violent. I enjoy violent things, as in media and video games, movies, karate, ninjas, warfare, all that stuff's cool. I was raised as a good old boy, you know, but I don't want to hurt anybody. I think it's pointless and there's no place for it. So when 99% of all gamers are relatively non-violent, you're ridiculous to accuse it. Like how many Call of Duties were sold in the last Call of Duty? We'll say X million copies. The fact that there's not even 1,000 people going on shooting sprees from that is lunacy. Like, your math, your logic has no floor.
And I understand, you know, there's good intentions going into this.
Absolutely.
But it's just uneducated. And
just unfounded.
I mean, yeah. I had a statement in mind that I just completely blanked in.
Well, I mean, if you read like Fahrenheit 451, or if you studied the Salem witch hunts, Spanish Inquisition, I mean, I never like bringing it up, but the Holocaust, like, obviously I'm not saying burning video games is as bad as a genocide. However, taking the innocent party of any kind, burning them, destroying them, isolating them, chastising them, it's always been bad. And the people, the powers that be, you know, this big white building here, that's not a government at all, that's a college. But anyways, so, you know, you can't just let people trounce all over the good name of video games. I mean, even that crazy sex game, you know, people aren't going to go and freaky sex wild rampages and make super aids. So, like, it's not going to happen. They're going to sit in their basement and probably geek out and be a little creepy and play that sex game. It's going to be okay. You know, you don't see people playing Galaga back in the day and then stealing cars and strapping photon cannons to the hoods and destroying planets.
Oh, was I not supposed to do that?
You weren't supposed to do that. I knew you were going to.
Okay. Thanks for the heads up.
So, I mean, based on how all of these things have never led to video games really taking a hit, ever, I'm not worried for the state of video games because of this, but
games will survive.
Absolutely. And this is just one more example of some weird group of people who have freaked out about video games and are literally, I think they said, this might be our chance to get rid of video games. Like, I don't even think they actually believe this. But then so many other people who are outraged by this incident want to have an outlet, and they're just taking it out on video games instead of countless other things. Like, let's not even get into gun control because it's never in the right means of gun control. Gun control doesn't mean take my guns. It means don't give me an assault rifle. I don't need one to defend my house. So
I don't like games. I don't think gun control is even the issue here either.
no.
It's again, it's the psychology
Mhm.
or the mental condition of the person,
Mhm.
like the physical mental condition. Like, is there something wrong that's causing them to have a mental illness,
Mhm.
or has their upbringing, their environment caused a psychological issue? So the problem there comes, what caused the psychological issue? Is it a bad parent? What caused the bad parent? More psychological damage? What caused that damage? Bad parenting from
Mhm.
before them? Um, what causes bad parents? What causes a parent to raise their child wrong?
Mhm.
What in their lives could cause them to be bad? Poverty, uh, not being happy in their marriage, different factors like that are what you need to tackle. Those are the things,
Mhm.
those are the seeds that get planted that lead up to these events.
Yep.
Those are what you should be tackling, not burning games.
Yeah. It literally, for one thing, it literally solves nothing. It's it's one thing to literally like go to EA and be like, we're shutting you down, man. No more games. But if you did that and then burned the games, I at least go, oh, you've stopped them from coming and gotten rid of them. Just burning them is literally wonky tonk. Like, where are you even coming from with that? That makes no sense. That is just an outward expression of violence and hatred for video games
It doesn't help their cause.
with no founded information on why you're doing that. So I'm utterly I'm utterly entertained by these things because for one, I now know they really have no footing. This one to me especially has no footing. And it saddens me that these people can't come together and have some sort of religious or emotional, ethereal sort of connection and come together and try and not make good of this situation, but try and move on. I mean, I just lost my grandmother and we didn't go try to kill the pneumonia empire. We tried to get past it and reflect on why we loved our grandmother. Like, we didn't like go insane. We just like came together and were positive about it. You know, should the guy who, obviously he's not around anymore, should that guy have been punished? Yes, he should be in jail. He should be there for a long time / removed from the equation.
Well, okay, so I have an opinion on the whole jailing thing.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy clearly has problems in the head.
Mm-hmm.
So he needs treatment before jailing. And is jailing even necessary?
Well,
I mean, you can confine him and keep him away from society,
that's more what I
but
mean.
prisons solve nothing.
No.
They change nothing. They are enormous government expenses
Mm-hmm.
that do nothing.
Yeah,
'Cause-
I'm more proponent of removing from the equation entirely or dungeons, where you get a loaf of bread and you just expire in 16 hours basically. But aside from that, I mean, obviously, if you are completely detached from reality and have a mental condition, you shouldn't be in jail because that's crazy. I mean, you've seen what is it, Batman Begins, where Arkham's released on the world and they all have like nerve gas released. Like that's basically what it would be like to be having mental illness in jail.
Yep. Yep.
But there are, like special mental facilities basically that you'd be put. That's what I meant. But that's basically like being in jail.
Yeah.
But you get a bed in a white jumpsuit. But yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, and that's really it there. It's okay, so the damage was done. Let's rehabilitate. Let's do what we can to get this
Mhm.
individual healthy again. I, they deserve punishment. I mean, that's based on, like 99% of society saying they deserve punishment.
and honestly, if he hadn't have, gone on a shooting spree and then ended himself, I'm pretty sure this whole video game thing probably wouldn't have come up. I think it's because they no longer, he killed himself, correctly?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, so he's gone. So I mean, there is no longer an antagonist. There is just detrimental loss, and there's no one to project like the thing onto. So video games take the rap, you know.
Yep. Games, guns,
Yeah.
anything that isn't the problem, they need to
Mhm.
publicize. They need to get it out there. They need content. They need to make money
Mhm.
off of this dying medium.
I mean, straight up, when my gun starts walking around killing people, I will be the first person to throw it into the iron smelter. First person. But until this finger right here isn't what's doing the damage, or when a video game literally turns into a transformer and then grabs a gun and then goes shooting people, I will never play games again, and I will never have a gun again.
You haven't seen Transformers 1, that Xbox that tried to
That's-
kill somebody?
That's what I'm talking about, man. Those little tiny transformers.
Yeah.
But I think,
So that's that.
yeah, so I think that's really what it all boils down to is they had no outlet for their anger, and video games were punished. Not really punished, but they were cast under the bus. But I don't think that'll last or hold water in any regard.
Nope.
And that is it for our show notes. Let's see, is there anything else?
Pretty long show.
That was a pretty long show. We'll see how it ends up edited up, but that is pretty long. I enjoyed it. I think I had fun. I think we covered a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff.
A lot of goodness, a lot of that sweet, juicy meat. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching and tuning in. For those who came live, if you didn't come in live, we're going to try and do these every Sunday. That is the plan. Usually in the evening, as of this is the first one, and it is the evening. So we'll see how that goes. Any changes will always be tweeted out on my Twitter at Algol Gaming, same as the title of my channel. And if this is somehow recorded or distributed onto iTunes or things like that, my YouTube channel is at Algol Game, or not at Algol Gaming. It's just Algol Gaming, ALGOL Gaming. And the Twitter is the same. All the Facebook, all of those things are the same. I have a Steam group, lots of stuff. If you would ever like to submit news articles, I do a Monday to Friday show every day. And you can tweet me articles at Algol Stream, or Algol's News, sorry. So Algol, ALGOLS News. You can tweet me things, or you can hashtag Algol's News, and I will see these every day. And if it's something I think will work out for the show, I will mention it, and I will try and credit you if I remember. And then we do the weekly recaps, hopefully every Sunday in the evening by chance, maybe earlier in the day to hit more time zones. We'll see how it goes. But that is me, Algol, and this is FNGEddie. Check out his channel. You guys need to give him more support. Convince him to do his new news show. He wants to do one.
Ooh yeah. Ooh yeah.
Force him into it. Harass him a lot.
Harass
And,
me.
Yeah, harass me.
My body is ready.
But for now, that's it, guys. Sorry to leave on a heavy note, but it's food for thought. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.